Good evening and welcome. My name is Latasha Deloach, and tonight we'll be starting with a public hearing. I declare this public hearing open. Brian, you want to go ahead?
Now is the time and place for the public hearing on the proposed plans and specifications for the 2017 West High Addition and Renovation Kitchen Equipment. The Board of Directors set the date for this public hearing on June 13th, 2017. Notice of public hearing was published in the Iowa City Press Citizen on June 14th, 2017. The district will receive bids on this project at 10 a.m. June 29, 2017 at the Educational Services Center located at 1725 North Dodge Street, Iowa City, Iowa, 52245. Notice to contractors was published as required by law in multiple statewide plan rooms and on the Iowa City Community School District website on June 14, 2017. Are there any questions from the board? Are there any questions from the public? Thanks.
Thanks, Brian. I declare this public hearing closed. Welcome to the Iowa City Community School District School Board meeting on June 27th. Thank you to those in the audience and on TV for taking interest in our district business. My name is Latasha Deloach. I would like to call this meeting to order. I would like to start out tonight by introducing those at the table with me: Superintendent Steve Murley, Directors Lori Rutland, Phil Hemingway, Brian Kirschling, Chris Lynch in his absence, Paul Ressler, Chris Liebick, and Recording Secretary Kim Colvin. The public is reminded that if they wish to speak, they need to complete a speaker form found at the table in the lobby and turn it in. During community comment, persons may speak to the board about topics relevant to the district. All community comment directed at non-agenda items and agenda items shall take place at the beginning of the meeting during the community comment section of the meeting. The first item on the agenda is community comment. Thank you for your interest in Iowa City Community School District and for your willingness to share your comments. You are reminded to give your name, address, and topic on which you would like to speak. During community comment, persons may speak to the board about topics relevant to the district. All community comment directed at non-agenda items and agenda items shall take place at the beginning of the meeting and shall be limited to 4 minutes per speaker. The initial community comment period shall be limited to 1 hour. Remaining community comments, to the extent necessary, shall take place at the end of the meeting. To the extent you are commenting on items not on our posted agenda, the board may ask follow-up questions of speakers. But it is prohibited by Iowa open meeting law from responding to questions from speakers or engaging in substantive discussions regarding non-agenda items. So first up, we always have our students come first. Grace Kersling.
Hello, my name is Grace Kersling. I live at 2101 Banbury Circle, Iowa City. I attend school at Shimmick Elementary. As a 6th grader at Shimmick, I can present to you about the amount of time spent on voting for the right equipment for the playground that both the students and PTO chose. We would all agree that we deserve a playground before school starts. Kids took time out of their day to vote on a structure, and we all tried to be fair and tried to make it so that everyone is going to be able to enjoy and have fun on the playground. Please consider keeping the plans and elements of the new structure. With this being said, I hope you guys will consider my opinion on this and my advice to help make kids happy to come back to school. We were and still are all very excited for the new playground. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Grace. Next up is Julie Van Dyke.
I'm sure all the able-bodied children will just love the new equipment. I'd love to see the ones that aren't used to navigating in wheelchairs give it a try. There's an article out from Jeff Therese Carlson, thank God he writes so much better, in the Press Citizen about an exciting press release that just came out from the American Civil Liberties Union of Iowa for immediate release Tuesday, June 27th. The ACLU and 6 Iowa attorneys file a request to change Iowa school rules on seclusion rooms and physical restraints for children. Des Moines and Coralville. The ACLU of Iowa and 6 attorneys have filed a petition for rulemaking with the Iowa Department of Education, asking the department to revise the Iowa Administrative Code chapter on the use of seclusion rooms and physical restraints in schools. Seclusion rooms and restraints have been criticized as being used too widely and for the punishment of children, especially those with disabilities and African Americans. As Jeff says in his article that's in the Press Citizen online and probably out tomorrow, this is just a month after the Iowa City School District was found to be in violation of state and federal laws on these things. In the Iowa City School District especially, the use of seclusion rooms and physical restraints on school children has been a topic of public concern. Daniel Zeno, policy counsel for the ACLU of Iowa, said Iowa must update its rules to reflect growing consensus that seclusion and restraint should not be used to discipline or punish children. Children should only be subjected to these practices in emergencies and when there are no other alternatives. Research shows that subjecting children to seclusion for discipline or to punish them has significant negative consequences for student learning and success. In addition, these practices can result in physical or psychological injury to children. It's further concerning that children of color and children with disabilities disproportionately are subjected to these outdated and damaging practices, particularly here. U.S. Department of Education data show significant racial disparities in the use of seclusion and restraints. In addition, that data show that children with disabilities are far more likely to be subjected to seclusion or restraints than other children. Quote, Iowa has far too many racial disparities in school discipline and in the juvenile delinquency and criminal justice systems. We must work to end these disparities so that all Iowa children have a fair chance. The proposed rules would be an important step in the right direction to lessen racial disparities and disparities with respect to children with disabilities, Zeno said. The petition was filed June 24th. A clarification to the petition was filed yesterday, June 26th. I suggest that you go ahead and read Jeff's article on this, and I would again say that I'm extremely disappointed in the report out from the hand-picked Iowa City Community School District Committee that reviewed these rooms, that they didn't even bother to go into the rooms from what I've seen and heard, that they didn't get closed into one of these rooms previously, which didn't even have door handles on the inside, and that they have no idea what they were actually really researching without having experienced the rooms themselves, all of them. The recommendations are essentially, the report out was essentially that you'll change the name of the rooms. You're going to call them seclusion rooms. A name changing, whitewashing again, and that you'll do some more staff training, and that you'll have a quarterly report out on how much better these rooms are getting. You know, all of this should have been done before. You're whitewashing it, and I hope the ACLU kicks your butt on this.
Thanks, Julie. Next up is Heather Bright, followed by Stephanie Van Hoosen.
Good evening. I am here on behalf of the Shimmick Playground Committee to once again weigh in on the status of our playground build. When we last met in this room for the work session, you, the board, asked us, the playground committee members that were present at the table, Dwayne, Kingsley, and Savannah Conley, to have a meeting and discuss making modifications to the playground in order to make it more inclusive. At the end of the school year, I approached Savannah about the status of the meeting, and she said she was still waiting for guidance from the district, whether that was you or the physical plant or wherever that guidance was coming from. And then she was waiting for guidance. School ended for the year, and the old structure was demolished, and the new site prep began. It was unclear to me what the status of the project was at that point, as we were asked to meet and discuss potential modifications. So, still moving forward by tearing down the playground and doing the prep work, but no meeting scheduled to discuss the modifications yet. And then last Monday, on the 19th, the Shimmick parent community received an email from Kingsley and Dwayne explaining a scheduled meeting to share modifications of the structure design and implementation of the timeline. So again, still moving forward, but without any discussion. Rather, we were told about the meeting that were held we were told about meetings that were held here in the weeks since school ended with ADA representatives and playground vendors who assisted in making modifications to our structure in order to make it more inclusive, which is good. Although the process since the May 23rd may not have included myself and others from the work session like we were supposed to be included, I will acknowledge that Kingsley and Dwayne did meet with individuals who could bring insight and expertise to the table and offer constructive suggestions to modify the structure. And the changes were a zero-grade entry from the blacktop so that the mulch will meet up with it so that wheelchairs, when they come in, we'll go down this grade, and that works better for wheelchairs. Flipping aside from one side to the other, to which I think Brian recommended at one point during the work session, so that the re-entry onto the structure was shorter. And then the last thing was to remove the big kahuna climber, which is what it's called, and replace it with a ramp. This is the changes that they presented to us last night at the meeting. Having attended all the meetings and hearing the suggestions, requests, and wishes expressed by the parents, staff, and kids, I see no conflict with the first two items that were changed, the zero entry and flipping the slide. I feel these changes will actually provide easier access for wheelchairs and better improvement around the playground while not conflicting with the committee's interests. Unfortunately, by not consulting us, the playground committee, the removal of the big kahuna climber and replacing it with a ramp is the exact opposite design that we had a vote on March 8th about. So we had one with a ramp and we had one with the kahuna climber, and we voted, and they voted in favor of the kahuna climber. Therefore, I cannot support the final design as it stands. I am not opposed to the ramp, but the big kahuna climber was a popular item, and the families and staff wanted to express their desire in that vote. My biggest concern at this point is that we have no playground right now. There's nothing there. There's site prep happening, but we have no playground. And we were reassured last night by Dwayne that we would have a playground at the start of school, but it may not be a complete playground. I fear that if we stall the project at this point in the process, again, our playground will not be ready for school. As a co-chair of the committee, I feel it's my duty to inform you of the intended wishes of the parents and staff that were involved in this decision process. Oh my God, I'm running out of time. The one thing I will say is that it sounds like maybe Dwayne and Kingsley revisited this today and have found a way to compromise, and I will leave that to them for them to explain that to you, that we can have the climber and the ramp. So if that can work, I think the committee would be on board with that.
Thanks, Heather. Next up, Stephanie. And then Melissa Krishna.
Hello, and thank you for your service. I read the board packet and the included transfer revocation policy. The information presented shows a clear progression of absences and tardiness leading to transfer revocation for all students. However, the procedure I read from your board packet does not take into consideration the rights of students who are homeless, as spelled out in the Every Student Succeeds Act, and which was effective on October 1st, 2016. I am here tonight to inform you that the district is not in compliance with the federal and state homeless education laws. Ultimately, you folks, the board, are responsible for ensuring that Mr. Murley, our superintendent, complies with federal protections for our homeless students. I'm not going to read the law to you, but I will read a small portion of a dear colleague letter dated July 27th, 2016, almost a year ago, before Betsy DeVos came in, where 5 major changes to the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act were detailed and explained in simple terms. One of these changes deals with the school that homeless children attend, and this is in sharp contrast to the transfer policy detailed in your board packets. Quote, there is a presumption that keeping homeless children and youth enrolled in the school of origin is in the child or youth's best interest, except when contrary to the request of the child or youth's parent or guardian, or the youth in the case of unaccompanied youth. It goes on to define some other things. It says, quote, a homeless child or youth must be able to remain in his or her school of origin for the duration of homelessness or until the end of the school year in which the child or youth becomes permanently housed. This is not what your packet says when it talks about revocations. This administration and Mr. Murley know about this issue. My efforts to get the district in compliance with federal and state laws for more than 2 years was ignored. The same federal policy existed before the ESSA. However, it didn't define best interest. Possibly, maybe a few too many administrators thought they knew what was best for children without consulting parents. Now best interest is defined in the law. Maybe you, as a board, will have better luck encouraging Mr. Murley to comply with the ESSA regulations, those that seem to say revoking a homeless student's transfer is not in the best interest of the student. Maybe you as a board will do something before the district receives even more citations for non-compliance with the laws that are intended to protect our most vulnerable students and help them be successful in school and in life. Also, I ask you to consider why neither Mr. Murley, who is a sought-after, nationally known expert consultant in superintendent education, somebody that knows it all, nor even one single person of the administrative staff brought this non-compliance to the surface and fixed the policy statement. Is it because of fear of retaliation, or why? What, who, and why would this policy be in place even with its blatant non-compliance with the law? What will you do, board?
Thanks, Stephanie.
The same as Mr. Murley? Ignore and fail to respond in the hopes that it will go away?
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just have one clarifying question. What you're referring to is in the teaching and learning item 3, is that correct?
It's the
The voluntary transfer guidelines
Yes.
and procedures.
And there's a page that lists the transfer or the revocation procedures in very clear words that all students can have their transfers revoked.
Do you have the page number on that by any chance?
It's the last page.
It's the third page, Phil.
Yeah.
Excuse me?
Page
It's the
3.
last.
I can give it to you.
Page 3.
Oh, thank you.
Could you maybe email us what you were reading from?
Yes, I'd be glad to.
Thank you.
Thanks. Next up is Melissa Krishna.
Melissa Krishnan, Shimmick Playground Concerned Advocate Parent. I came prepared a little bit today. First and foremost, I wanted to thank you all for the special work session held over a month ago regarding the continued concerns with the Shimmick Playground designs. Really appreciate that. Tonight's agenda includes you hearing an update on the district's work that has occurred since May 23rd. I'd like to note that for the record that under the agenda item details description for tonight, it states on December 30th, 2016, the district received 2 proposals for this equipment. The physical plant staff, building principal, and PTO representatives reviewed the proposals and selected the proposals from Boland Recreation. I believe the statement's incorrect, that the outdoor rec proposals and drawings were never shown to the PTO nor the members of the playground committee. So I just wanted to clear that up. What has occurred since May 23rd? Well, not a lot. We do know that the old structure has been torn down and excavations begun on the new site. 2 weeks post-work session, June 8th, Mr. Botchway was willing to meet on June 14th to discuss progress and address concerns, but that meeting was canceled. There was no further communication until May 19th when the school announcement was sent out that a public playground meeting would be held last night, which was June 26th. And I hope that you are all given an accurate view of the evening's discussions, as I think everyone will attest to the fact that there is still continued confusion, unanswered questions, and no clear direction. As one attendee stated, this is just another hot mess. Here's my takeaway, though. The district presented modifications after stating they had spoken with 2 experts, a playground expert and a playground surface expert, both of which were not present to answer the barrage of questions raised by everyone, most of which the district also could not answer. In regards to the playground surface, I do applaud the district for implementing a no zone, a new zero entry concept, and that this concept will be implemented across the district's playgrounds to repair current access barriers. Thank you. But it still leaves major concerns in using engineered wood fiber. It was confirmed the district does not own a compactor, and maintenance is not a summer-only endeavor. It's a daily, complicated process. The financial impact over 25 years of EWF maintenance versus a rubberized surface could not be answered, but this shows a step has finally been made in the right direction. The playground structures. The recommended modifications were not more than the original set of designs. It was nothing more than the original set of designs rejected by the playground committee back in January. Tilting a component to a few feet to be closer to a ramp does not make it more inclusive. Where's the effort to make the playground more inclusive and accessible to the mobility challenged so they can engage and play with their peers? I asked why there wasn't a wheelchair-accessible merry-go-round, a teeter-totter. The answer, many of those components are not approved in the United States. Canada, maybe. I wonder if the ARC of Southeast Iowa knows that, because they have one, or the University of Iowa Center for Disabilities with their wheelchair swing. But I was told that too is not approved. We were told there were discussions with experts and some 8 recommendations made by an ADA playground expert, but what those were was not clearly explained. Where was the expert, and why wasn't he at the meeting to answer our questions? Safety concerns were raised with the police review, and we're told that the director had been taken that training and that there was no need to be concerned. There's a camera, there's no lighting, but no worries, they'll discuss that later. We were told that no one would walk out of that meet happy. Well, that's a fact. And it's not just because folks weren't getting things that they were advocating for. It's that we all walked out of that meeting because we were presented with no more guidance than what the district has provided from the beginning, which is none. We walked in a hot mess, and we walked out even a hotter mess. I think it's safe to say all attendees are in agreement that we are no further along than we were 7 weeks ago, and
Thanks,
are still
Melissa.
getting no clear answers and direction.
Thanks.
There's a little more, but I didn't get
Could you provide that to us, the remainder of your
Maybe
comments?
maybe email it to us?
You can email it to us.
Is it okay?
I can give you this.
Yeah, I'll take that.
Right.
I'll pass it on.
Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda.
Yes, I'd like to pull items 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16.
6, 7, 8, 10, 11. What was the other one?
12, 13, 14, 15, and 16.
And 16.
Just a question, were those questions asked in advance?
Some were, some weren't.
Which ones were?
Oh, I can't really recall right at the moment.
Lord. Is there a motion?
I move we approve the consent agenda, minus items 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16.
Second.
So I'm going to vote no because it's just a lot of them. And so I'm just letting you know that in advance. So if things were answered in advance, maybe we don't necessarily need them on this list. Okay, I think we're ready to, wait, was there a review of the bills? Did anybody look at the bills?
Yes. Yes. Lori and I looked at the bills and had some questions, talked with Les, and I didn't find anything out of the normal,
Okay.
that we went through.
Kim, I think we're ready to vote.
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with directors Liebig, Hemingway, Rotland, and Ressler voting yea and directors Deloach and Kirschling voting nay.
Okay, next on the agenda is our board work. We have the Hoover Elementary School petition. Steve? Or is that just more of a discussion? Did you guys want to share something, then the board can?
Sure, and actually Attorney Holland is here with us, and he's provided a memo in response to a request from the board that is attached to the agenda, and so I would defer to Council Holland and defer to you for questions to him.
Okay, thanks.
Should I just?
Is there specific questions?
Should I just jump
Yes.
in? I mean, I was the one who put it on the agenda, or asked to have it put on the agenda, and I really just put it on the agenda so that we could get the discussion started. I think it's very helpful to have gotten the opinion that we got. I have some thoughts about it. I don't know if it's worth working through all of them right now, but I can tell you a little bit about sort of what my thoughts are in response. And I'm just hoping we can just kind of continue the discussion and maybe get some additional input from Joe in response to some of the stuff that I'm digging up. A lot seems to turn. I mean, I think some of the stuff that we all agree on is if the petition, if the petition addresses a subject that falls within the petition statute, then, and assuming the signatures are what they need to be, then the board is required to put it on the ballot or forward it to the auditor to put it on the ballot. If it's not, then we don't have the power to put it on the ballot. And so the issue is, well, does this language sale, lease, or otherwise dispose of property in the statute, does that include demolition of property? And so I was sort of digging up everything I could over the weekend about the topic. And what I found was that traditionally, at least what little there is out there, the statute was interpreted to include demolition. Something happened in 2007 in the city of Decorah, where, and I don't know how much detail to go into about it right here, but in which a case arose where basically the school board voted to demolish a building, and then the voters filed a petition to lease the building, basically instead of demolishing it. So that created a problem because there are these two different statutes. One gives the board the power to dispose of property and sell it and lease it. One gives the voters the power to do it, and they're sort of coming into conflict. And the court in that case, for various reasons, which I won't go into in detail, but I can distribute the thoughts in more detail. For various reasons, the court said, well, dispose of does include demolition, and for other reasons, that petition had to go forward, even though the school board had already voted to demolish the building. That prompted a change in the legislature the following year, and they tried to tinker with the statute to kind of rectify that problem in a way that was more favorable to school boards maybe and less favorable to voters. Then the new legislature came in a year later, tinkered with the thing again, according to the legislative history, to give the voters the power of the disposition over the property. And so as we look at these amendments that are the focus of Joe's letter, I'm just suggesting we should take a look at them with respect to that legislative history. And I've got some ideas that I've written out and forwarded to Joe. But again, this particular decision from Decorah is one of these state trial court decisions. You're not going to find it unless you happen to know it's out there. And I just happened to stumble across news reports about it. And so that kind of colored my understanding of what these later amendments were intended to do. And all I'd be looking for tonight is just to kind of send that back for some additional review. I did write something out. We talked about whether we should put it on the agenda. It was, today. So rather than put it on the agenda again, I could pass it out right now, but I think maybe, I don't know how that works public meetings wise. If we could just have it put on the agenda or, I guess either put on next agenda or in some way that it would be public going forward. It doesn't have to be something
I think you can make
that we look at
public
tonight.
Can it be added to the
memo
minutes?
To the minutes, or
If I distribute it right now, well, that's fine with me. I'd rather distribute the electronic copy because there's links in it. So I distribute the paper copy. That doesn't do a whole lot of good if you want to click on the links.
True indeed.
I think if you just submit it in the minutes, You can give us a paper copy tonight and maybe send it to Kim to include in the minutes.
Got it. So if you just want to include it in the minutes, that's fine.
I just have a question on, so you're essentially saying that, well, could you, could you paraphrase your ruling in your nine pages here for us? I guess it's not 9 pages, it's 9 pages of the entry, but can you just, in short period of time, since you're here and we're on the clock, just explain to us what you found in this petition and why you made the decisions that you did?
I'd like to preface the specifics with some general comments about my experience in the process. I've been representing school districts for over 35 years. The construction and closure and demolition of buildings and sale of former school sites is a topic that recurs time and time again. I agree with Director Liebig that in 2007, 2008, the Decorah demolition of the East Side School was a catalytic event, but it wasn't really the underlying problem or syndrome. That started significantly earlier. Across Iowa, the population's been shrinking in rural areas. Lots of rural districts have consolidated, lots of rural districts have closed attendance centers, some relatively new, some rather ancient. A lot of communities have a very strong investment in those school structures, not just the school system, but perhaps the building where they went to school, which is no longer in service. And all over Iowa, there was agitation in local communities about what happened to buildings where there were no students any longer. Were they sold? Were they demolished? And so demolition removes the physical landmark from the community. And it wasn't just Decorah, it was a number of small communities. It became a focal point in Decorah, and the board had approved demolition of the building. There was a petition filed. There was actually an offer to lease the property, a written lease offered to the district, essentially by a restoration group. And the court said that that petition was proper to be on the ballot, and it did proceed to a vote. The building was ultimately demolished. In response to that, the legislature made some changes in the statute in a couple different dimensions. They caused an immediate backlash in the school governance committee, the community, for a couple reasons. One is if a board made a decision to sell a building, demolish a building, whatever they're going to do with it, the voters could file a petition for up to a year, which made it just impossible to ever sell a school building. And an abandoned school building becomes problematic. They're virtually uninsurable because insurance companies don't like to insure empty structures. They're targets for vandalism, yet you still have to heat the building, at least to some minimal degree, or somehow weatherize it. Allowing people up to a year to petition to reverse the board's decision was a real flashpoint. So was the whole issue of who had the decision-making rights to demolish a building. The next session of the legislature came back and realized that this was really problematic. They did two things. They took out the definition of disposition in two different statutes in the code, one dealing with voters, one dealing with the board. They also shortened that 12-month period to 10 days. So if the decision is made, there's a 10-day window to file a petition directly contrary to the board action. I was on the Iowa Council of School Board Attorneys. I've been on that for 30-plus years. I've chaired it a couple times. I'm on the executive committee. This was an issue that was followed. And one of the unfortunate things in Iowa is there's virtually no legislative history on legislation. If you are trying to interpret a federal statute, there's congressional hearings, there's congressional record, there's all sorts of information available about what was going through the thoughts of legislators. There's House and Senate journals. You can go back and look at the debates, the statements made by the representatives and senators. That just doesn't exist in Iowa. Once in a while, you find a little introduction at the beginning of a House file or Senate file which says what it's about. But I've looked, and as far as I can tell, there is zero legislative history for either the change in 2008 or the change in 2009. But I know why they happened. I wasn't directly involved in the process, but I was an interested spectator, as were a lot of other of my colleagues who represent school districts. I've talked with some of them, and they are in agreement with the decision that I made, which essentially is that the board is decision maker as far as demolition and not the electors, that there is no public measure or proposition that can be lawfully submitted. So that, in essence, is how I came to that decision. There's a whole overlay of the nuances of the statutes, the two code sections, and I received late today a lengthy analysis from Director Liebig, which frankly I didn't have a chance to look at, but will. I am always willing to listen to other informed opinions, but in the process of this little part of it is kind of the tip of the iceberg. I looked at a whole variety of other statutes and things which impact this decision. I have 5 other reasons why I think this petition is unlawful. Now, a logical question is, why didn't you put those in this? Well, I kind of look at things like courts do. First of all, I was not very keen on issuing this opinion at all until a petition was filed. It's an advisory opinion. Courts don't like to give advisory opinions. And when I look at things, I try to look at it from a standpoint, if this ended up in court, what would happen? So, against my better judgment, at the request of the board president, I gave that opinion. I did not include those other items because another concept that you'll find in decision-making by courts is if there is an answer which answers the question, you don't have to throw in every other reason possible why that decision is correct. Once it's decided, you often see in court decisions we don't need to deal with other issues raised by the parties. So in a way you can say I picked what I thought was the cleanest, clearest explanation of why I don't think this is a public measure or proposition authorized by law. I can certainly supplement my opinion with all those other reasons if the board thinks that would be a benefit. There is no petition on file as yet that I know of. I assume it will be filed before the deadline, and the first step is for the board secretary to consider whether it has a sufficient number of valid signatures. Then it's up to the board to actually formally submit that to the county auditor for inclusion on the ballot. That'll have to be done at either a special or regular board meeting sometime, I assume, in the month of July. I believe the deadline to getting it to the auditor is, it's either August 4th or August 5th. So by the end of July, there'll need to be some sort of final decision made by this board. So, long-winded answer, Director Hemingway, but I hope I covered the points you're interested in.
Yeah, so, and if I can get what you're saying is essentially that the measure has no power. Is that fair to say what you're saying, that, you know, they don't have what is being petitioned, they don't have the power to change anything, right?
I don't think the statute authorizes the statute requires a public measure or proposition authorized by law to be submitted. I don't think it qualifies as either, because I don't think the question of demolition of a school building is one that is in the hands of the electorate. It's in the hands of the board.
Right, it's our decision.
That's correct.
So why would we object if the public weighs in on something that they have no power to do anyway?
because there's no legal authority for submitting advisory questions to the voters. In fact, there are some Attorney General's opinions exactly the contrary, that one of them, I think, literally says that the public ballot is not to be used as an opinion poll. So I think it's contrary to law to submit an advisory question. Plus, I think that's a questionable precedent, because then if you think that the electorate can have any question someone can rally enough signature for submitted to it, I think you never know what that issue is going to be. I think, and I think that I don't think you can do it. I think it's sort of the bottom line.
No, I have to agree with Joe on, you can't put it on the ballot if it's not within the definition of the statute. I mean, if it were me, I would be interested to hear the other objections you have also. If you want to wait till after the thing's filed, though, I understand.
Now, we've gotten communications from community members that are interested in any communications you had with the board president and things like that concerning the request for this. Is that something that can be shared?
Those are privileged communications within the scope of attorney-client privilege, and I can't share them. It would take a vote of the board to authorize that, and I think before you do that, you need to know exactly what communications and what scope you'd be authorizing. And it's a general proposition. I don't think it's a good idea to waive attorney-client privilege.
Well, this is something that I was wondering about, because a couple of years ago, before I was on the board, I asked for a copy of an opinion that Joe wrote about the First Amendment and how it relates to community comment. And I was told that that was privileged information and it couldn't be shared without a vote of the board, which in the end, I sort of grudgingly accepted that conclusion. However, then over the weekend, Joe's opinion appears on the public agenda without any vote of the board to put it on. Now, I was prepared to come to the meeting and first thing say, I'd like to share Joe's opinion with the board. Can we have a vote on that? But how did it end up public without a vote of the board if the privilege belongs to the board?
Well, after the last meeting, it was pretty clear to me that items that were not on the agenda should not be added to agenda, that items that did not have attachments prepared when the agenda was published were not to be added, and that those items would be pushed back. So when his opinion came in, I shared my understanding of the discussion that took place at the last work session. I shared that with President Lynch and Vice President Deloach. President Lynch's opinion was that this was an issue of timeliness and interest to the board, and so he asked that I add that to the agenda.
Boy, I don't see how one board member can waive the privilege of the board. But I want the document to be public, so it's kind of moot. However, it does seem like there's some inconsistency with how that's being handled, and when the district wants people to see it, it appears on the agenda. If the district doesn't want people to see it, I'm told I can't have it.
Can I inquire exactly when did the district contact you to render this decision?
I don't recall the exact date. It was probably 10 days before I actually gave the opinion to the board secretary.
Because I remember doing bills, and it seems like we got charged for some things around May 15th, or May 16th and 17th.
I think that's correct. There was some initial consideration I gave to this when I first became aware that petition was circulating, because at that point it wasn't clear how soon it might be filed and how soon something might be necessary. And so rather than wait and try and do some of the background in a hurried fashion, I gave it some thought at that point in time.
And so was that something you did on your own initiative, or were you contacted by President Lynch or the superintendent to render a decision?
Superintendent Murley, I believe, sent me the copy of what was up on the Save Hoover blog, which included the petition, and asked me to take a look at it.
Okay.
Can we just agree as a board that if we do get any further guidance from this, that it's okay with us if it appears on the agenda?
Sure, but I don't wonder if
So
we have
that-
to make a motion for that.
How about I move that if we get further guidance from Joe in the next 2 weeks, it's okay to put it on the agenda before a vote to make it public?
Can we do that?
Second?
All right. Oh, wait a minute.
For discussion.
Anybody want to, thoughts?
I'd just say that we've I understand the nature of the motion. I feel like we've received the guidance from Joe. I just want to clarify, are you saying that any additional guidance from Joe and it ends up on the agenda?
About the Hoover petition. If we get any more in the next 2 weeks, that we won't have to wait till the meeting to reveal that to people. I mean, it's just sort of formalizing what happened this week.
This seems
Okay.
reasonable. If there's something that comes up that needs to be shared, then I don't see a reason why we just can't get a chance to review that. Is there, I mean, if there's a reason why not, I mean, state it now. I'm not about to send emails and hang out later about it. I mean,
Madam President, could I say something?
sure.
As I said earlier, I think it's important to define the scope of what you're asking to be made public immediately.
True.
I think certainly if you want to include any formal opinions that I would give to the board or the administration, I understand that. It may be that there are background questions that I would ask, an email
Right.
asking for a piece of information. I think it would be better, the district would be better served not to have every communication, but sort of the final product, which I think is what you're really looking for.
Can we agree on that scope, that it's about final product, not
Yes.
these other pieces? Is that clear for everybody? Okay. Because if he has to ask questions, it doesn't make sense for us to get every single correspondence.
No, I'm just talking about a formal opinion from Joe to us,
So do you want to amend your motion?
if there is one.
Do you want to amend your motion?
You can amend the motion along those lines, yes.
Can you read it back, Kim, when it's amended so that we're clear on what that is?
What I
And
have
then we'll
now-
still need a second for that.
What I have now is the motion that any further guidance received by Attorney Holland be approved to be put on the agenda. Do we want to change that to say any further formal opinions? How do you want to say it?
About the Hoover petition can be put on the agenda before the meeting.
Before the next meeting, before the July 11th meeting.
Right.
I'll second that as well.
Well, now we've got two motions on the,
No, this isn't amended.
okay,
This is just amended.
okay.
It's a friendly amendment.
It was his motion, he can amend it. Rules,
And I second the amended motion.
okay? Can you review the motion when you have it, Kim?
I have motion that any formal opinions about the Hoover petition received by Attorney Holland be approved to be put on the agenda.
By the next meeting, I'm being real specific. July 11th meeting.
Kim, I think you mean received from me.
Yes, received.
I did say received, what did I say? I'm sorry.
To
Well, Kim is typing that up, and then just to make sure, so if that were to come in day of, that's still okay then to post that and to send that out to you electronically?
Yes.
Further discussion?
I just want to make sure that, any opinions are that Joe is doing the board's work and not doing work to answer questions from a political action committee. So
I think I've made this point before. I represent the school corporation by statute. I don't represent the board. I don't represent the administration. I always endeavor to think about the district, whatever that amorphous body politic is, and represent that rather than individuals within the district or elements within the community. I have no stake in the outcome of this. I'm just trying to do the best I can to tell the board what I think the law is in relation to this.
I certainly believe that. I'm not sure that everybody involved in this discussion can say that. So I have concerns about that.
Can we, I'm calling the vote, I'm calling the question for the vote. Kim, if you're ready.
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with Directors Liebig, Deloach, Hemingway, Rotland, and Ressler voting yea and Director Kirschling voting nay.
Okay, next up is teaching and learning. We have our Community Education District-wide Advisory Council. Steve?
Yes, we're going to turn that over to Laura Daly, who just walked in. So, Laura, the floor is yours.
All right, in your board docs materials was a report, the annual report that summarizes the meetings that occurred during this year, and something, of course, I'll take questions. If anyone has questions, let me know, but the main thing that you may want to refer to are for last year's goals. The council decided to continue essentially each of the goals, but adding a little different, an additional focus of taking a look at gathering some baseline data about our how well we're serving our early childhood, birth to age 5, particularly in our preschool programs, and just seeing the accessibility of that. So that was the main recommendation from the council moving forward, while continuing the goals from the past. And knowing that you've probably read the report, just wanted to know if there's any questions.
Is there any particular thing you need from us other than just provide a report?
Nope, just if you had any questions, and just to, because this is an advisory council, and so we just need the board's approval.
So, Laura, I just want to state, the work of the CDAC has been essential to addressing a number of issues in the district. The membership has served with integrity. Mm-hmm. I know that we changed the structure of the terms. I think it was about a year ago, perhaps a little bit longer, in order to make sure that terms overlapped better and there wasn't large amounts of turnover. I just wanted to find out, if that has had the desired effect, and certainly, just wanted to continue to support the work of CDAC.
Well, we do have an open seat right now,
Mm-hmm.
but as it's summarized in the report, that'll be posted on the district website. And I don't know if that was part of the changes maybe a year or so ago in terms of how that process went, but we definitely want a broad representation of members on the council. And, having attended a couple of the meetings, there definitely are different voices in the community taking a look at various needs. And so, although I wasn't here when those changes were put in place, it does seem to be serving that goal, and we can convey that back to the council the next time that we meet too, that we want to make sure that is getting the desired effect that you're talking about. Sure.
They're doing excellent work, and they're making a difference, and I just hope that you can convey that back to them.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Is there more than, I know that it's going to be posted on the district. Are there other ways that you all are sending out looking for for folks to be on this council?
I'm not exactly sure how Joan has done that in the past, so I'll have to ask her if she has used other methods, but I do know that the members of the council also reach out to others in the community. I just am not sure if they do it any formal or specific ways, but that's a great question, and we can look into maybe some other methods of communication if Joan's not already doing that.
Okay, well, it would be really great if we can make sure that we're getting the word out. I would rather have quite a few, and it may be quite a few people interested, so
Sure.
to include and increase some of the diversity in the committee as well would be great.
Yeah.
And Latasha, maybe just to add on to that, since we're at the meeting of the board right now, that one open seat is in for a Coralville resident, correct?
Yep.
Yes.
Specifically in
People know that.
Coralville resident. Maybe it can be posted in the schools or et cetera, so that parents are aware in that area.
Yeah, thank you. Good idea.
Other questions? Further discussion? Okay, next up we have our Immigrant Task Force recommendations.
And Kingsley's going to get that pulled up here and ready to go.
So not too long ago, we came before you and you passed two resolutions. One regarding just a resolution in support of our immigrant students and families, but also an additional resolution that created a task force. And we were charged with 4 different items that this committee spent a lot of time working hard on and putting recommendations forth. And so I'm going to ask some of the committee members to come up and present the recommendations, and I'll answer any questions if you have those.
Thanks, Kingsley. Good evening. My name is Charlie Eastham, a member of this task force as a representative from the Equity Advisory Committee. And I'm going to read for you the first recommendations made by the task force. The first of those recommendations is to use district's critical incident stress management protocol or a similar system in order to support students who may be involved in a raid and or deportation proceedings. Second recommendation is to send district and building level communications after concerning and or ambiguous shifts in immigration policy. The third is build capacity at the building level for support to students after concerning and or ambiguous shifts in immigration policy through peer counseling, designated point persons, and additional training for staff at the building level. And finally, assist in preparation and the dissemination of information regarding action plans and school procedures in the event of a family member may be detained, removed, or deported. And then we note that the task force has assisted in preparing emergency contact updates for district families prior to the end of this school year, the past school year, and that activity will be further at the start of the next school year.
Good evening. My name is Maida Barrett, and I was also part of the task force to support immigrant students and families. And the second recommendation that the task force is putting forward is to provide information to staff on the law and their responsibilities as an employee of the school district. And during our meetings, the task force assisted in the preparation of communication for administrators to give to the staff, and directive to inform the staff was given to principals before the end of the school year.
Good evening. My name is Natalia Sabina, and I'm a staff member for the ICCSD and a member of the task force. Recommendation for number 3 is for to create district policies before the beginning of the upcoming school year, informing and requiring staff to send the district office ICE requests of any form and general subpoenas, include need for parent notification of subpoenas, and reconsider policy around sharing of school directory information as well.
Hello, my name's Christina Andino, and I'm a parent of students in the Iowa City School District. So, our recommendations for number 4 were to provide community education about the district's response to ICE requests of any form. We decided to have information available in a number of different documents for community organizations that provide resources for families. And that could take the form of brochures, district communication protocol, student newspaper, enrollment packets, or a newsletter. And the district, our recommendations are that the district provides Know Your Rights presentations in the community.
So briefly, we brought up the fact that, this was because of some changes in immigration policy from the federal government. And so when you saw the language in there that talked about concerning and ambiguous, that's not a legal definition. That's just what our families and students felt. And so, we would get that information from our families if they felt like there was concerning immigration policy. I just wanted to make that clear. That's not a legal wordage in that sense. Additionally, I just wanted to make sure that you're aware of the data within the Student Climate Survey. I know we didn't spend too much time on it, but this showed as well that 65% of students report hearing hurtful comments about immigrants from other students, and 25% of multiracial students report that their school is not a welcoming and safe place. And so it was still we didn't talk too much about that just based on when the Student Climate Survey came out, but it's still important to note that this was an important issue, not only from the concerning immigration policy, but also that was reported from our students throughout the year.
Good evening. My name's Jack Hathaway. I'm an attorney over at Bondra Malott PLC in town. Next steps we have for what we developed in the Immigration Task Force were to implement the task force recommendations that were just presented to you, to address additional topics discussed by the group, and that included figuring out ways to get financial aid for possibly undocumented students, and possibly distributing some sort of guardianship or power of attorney form, or helping parents that were at risk of deportation ensure that their kids would be taken care of in such a situation, and creation of an immigrant advisory board.
Before I open it for questions, the last note on the creation for Immigrant Advisory Board, that was not something that was talked about in the task force. I added that after taking these recommendations to the Eastern Iowa Refugee Summit that occurred a couple of weekends ago. There were individuals there that were representing different community groups that thought it was important, especially since they were putting together different community leadership, that we have an actual immigrant advisory board to kind of guide the district with other issues as far as the welcoming schools and some of the other things and policies that we want to make sure that everybody has a clear understanding, or that we may need to look at as far as changing and making sure it's as inclusive as possible. So this time I'll take any questions.
Yeah, I have a question about recommendation for number 3 about create district policies before the beginning of the upcoming school year, informing and requiring staff to send to district office ICE requests of any form and general subpoenas. We actually don't have a policy and governance meeting. I mean, we're happy to take that up, but we don't have a scheduled meeting, I don't believe, until September 5. So first things, I think that yes, we'd love to take that up if that's the direction. If that's what the board would like us to do? But if there's a place to start or wording to start with, that would certainly be helpful.
Could that be an administrative guideline?
Yeah, so yes, I mean, it could be an administrative guideline. I just wanted to make sure that you're aware, and that there's so many things that from a district standpoint we do. One of the concerns that I always have is that we make sure that's codified in some particular way. So, I always say this: if everybody was to leave, even you all, that it was put somewhere down in writing so that parents would know how to address certain things. And so that's definitely something we can do and make sure that it's an administrative guideline, but also make sure that parents are aware that it's there.
It's more likely to get done by the upcoming school year if it's an administrative guideline.
Any other questions?
I was going to ask a similar question, basically, which is how much of these recommendations requires board action, other than just sort of saying, yes, that sounds good. But I mean, do you need us to approve
mainly, just yes, it sounds good, and continue forward. And so, just briefly before we had the board meeting, just mentioned to the group that this information is a start. There's additional things that we need to do just to ensure that our immigrant students and families feel welcome, feel safe in our community. But it was important that we kind of put this group together to get, and there was a lot of community members that weren't here and task force members that weren't here, but get that start as far as some of the things that we're looking at. I think that Jack had mentioned some additional things that I think that we had considered a little bit internally, but not necessarily in the same scope, that again could really help our students and our families as well.
I was going to ask that question also, because I'm sort of remembering back to when it initially came up on the agenda, and there was sort of a range of proposals, a range of ambitiousness and long-term, short-term, and so I was wondering if there were still things sort of out there on the horizon that might still come, up, but this is sort of the more immediate.
Yeah, so this is some of the more immediate move, and so, these are the short-term recommendations, but we're going to consistently have an immigrant planning group that meets to continually discuss, I wouldn't say just necessarily policies that are coming from the state or the federal government, but just in general, how can we be more inclusive across the board? I think that Immigrant Advisory Board will really help, and I think there were a lot of concerns that I don't have it with me right now that were just things that we could change or look into that would provide a better environment.
Thanks.
So, thank you to the task force, because you all came together really quickly and came up with some amazing recommendations really quickly. So I appreciate that, because I know time was of the essence, and it was really important in our community we did this. So I appreciate the time that you all sacrificed to do that. I really do, because I know sacrifice away from families, et cetera, to do that. So thank you so much. Also, thank you to the Equity Office for making sure that this was in multiple languages, knowing that we expressed at the last meeting that the immigrants come from all different nationalities and ethnicities, and so it's important that we have it represented in multiple languages, though I think a lot more of our stuff should be that way. But I also would like Kingsley, if it's possible, Steve, if you can ask Kingsley, because I'm not his boss, if you could provide some information about the protocol, just a link. I would be interested in learning a little bit more about that particular protocol. And also when some of these community presentations about Know Your Rights for immigrants, it'd be great to just get a flyer or something just to kind of know, because sometimes I might want to attend or send it out to others that I may know in the community. So, and one other thought was that potentially there could be someone that could, as a person is on the equity committee, have a rep from that group that could come and give an update. I know you could, but it's sometimes nice to hear someone other than Mr. Botchway. So it would be great if we can get an update sometimes just about how we can support that work. I know we have a rep from our committee, but also if there's other voices that would like to attend, it would be great.
I would just add on to just another accommodation for the committee that was put together. Again, there were a lot of responses for people that were interested. The people that were put together were from all walks of life and really contributed in, I would say, immeasurable ways, as far as, I would even say, opening my eyes to some of the things that, I missed and things that we need to focus on. So kudos to them. They did the work. So
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions, if I could. Are there other people from the committee that are here that could stand to be recognized that were part of this?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Well, yeah, I want to thank everybody for the hard work that they did, and I think your suggested next step of creating an advisory board is extremely important to have a group. Because if anything, recent politics has shown us that decisions can happen in an instant that can change family status dramatically within minutes or hours. So I think it's important to have a group ready to step in. And I know earlier when we were having discussions on safety and security, we have that flip sheet with all the different things that you do. If you have a fire, you flip it up and it has all the, is this being incorporated into that as far as, so if there's something quickly that happens, staff can quickly go to that and see?
Yeah, and so it's kind of nestled in the recommendation. We talked about both from a large, I don't want to equivocate around what a traumatic experience is. You know, we looked at the critical incident stress management protocol as a protocol if a major occurrence happened. But kind of to your point, if there was something that happened that was still equally as concerning, would we have a protocol that staff would know about? Yes. And so that was discussed kind of in the recommendations around a point person or somebody that could be then contacted and know kind of what to do. Now, those procedures haven't been set because this is, again, a recommendation, but we can work on that moving forward.
Just have two quick things. First of all, thank you for all the work that you guys have done on this. Brian actually touched on the point that I was going to ask about the policy, so I won't cover that again. My other question, I guess, on recommendation 2, and maybe you haven't done this yet, but what is the plan to have the staff informed before school starts?
Yeah, and so the way that went out before is through administration to notify staff of that they would be sharing this information, and I would be honest with you, we were somewhat redundant about it. I think I went over it with our principals at least 7 times just to make sure they understood kind of the correct protocol as far as how to handle a nice request. I think that additional communication would go out along the lines of the communication we send out for FERPA, because again, this is within that kind of legal constraint as well, and so we can add on to some of that information and ensure that everybody receives that email and is knowledgeable as far as how they should proceed in those, how they should handle those procedures.
And staff, are we talking teachers and paraeducators?
Yeah, I meant all staff.
Okay.
Yeah, all staff.
And then as new paraeducators or teachers get hired throughout the year, they will also get brought up to date.
Correct. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next up, we have our voluntary transfer guidelines and procedures.
So I'm going to turn that over to Amy and Matt, and one thing I would ask you to do is help to clarify whether or not homeless students are actually considered as part of the voluntary transfer process.
Hear me? Is that working? Okay. I'll just start with that question. Homeless students wouldn't typically be on a transfer, so their protections would apply to their status at that school. They remain in their school of origin. If we'd have attendance concerns, we would handle those accordingly through our process. But the only situation that would kind of present itself, as the community commenter talked about, would be if a student had applied for a transfer and then their status changed to homeless and they were at a school on time of a transfer. And then again, those homeless protections would kick in, so we would not go down the process of revoking a transfer because they would need to stay at their school of origin. So we always would want to honor that and maintain that. So it's not articulated in that process, and we could state that in the note. We could clarify that for any student status that does change. But typically most of them start at that school if they're in that scenario, and then we wouldn't look to revoke that or have to act on any of that because they wouldn't technically be on a transfer there. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have about that. The documents you have in front of you there address some of the questions that Director Rotland had asked about here when we talked transportation a couple weeks ago. The 3 questions detailed. You have some data there again that was also provided with the transportation conversation. Just to kind of quickly summarize those without going through all 3 questions in detail. We know we need to be very flexible with our families and with the situation that works best for them, and help them with any timelines that may change. We had originally had a December 1st deadline, but we've been honoring any requests as they've came into our office as late as this summer. So, and we'll continue to do that all the way into if we get into the school year and they decide there's a better situation that would be necessary for them at the secondary level. Like I said, we may try to consider some things about timing if we're in the middle of a trimester, attendance, and making sure that we're supporting them in the best scenario possible there. But we want to make sure that families are in the situation they think is going to be best for them. And then the very last document I just included on the side that kind of led to some of that conversation that I started with was just what is the process that we would use if somebody was on a transfer and they were having problems getting to school. We have a lot of different pieces to consider there, but you do see the process that we've articulated before. We are going to have a little bit of a unique scenario here that we've, for the first time in a while, are going to have multiple students on transfers. So we'll want to clearly articulate this in August that families are aware if they're on a transfer, what that process is. And our administrative team has talked about it a lot this spring to make sure we're aware and operating by that same set of guidelines in each of the secondary schools. But I did want to make that clear to you guys so you had that information, since I didn't mention it in their original answering of those questions.
So just for my own clarification here, Matt,
Yep.
What the speaker was referring to was in step 3 on this last page?
Right, but that's why I'm saying that homeless students wouldn't apply to that scenario because they wouldn't have applied for a transfer. They would start at their school, and we would just maintain that as their school of origin throughout that. And then again, so the second scenario that could present itself if their situation did change, where they had applied for a transfer, they became homeless for some reason during the course of the academic year, we would consider that a homeless student, and we wouldn't do anything about revoking a transfer. We would work for attendance support, but we wouldn't be trying to change the school for that student unless the family requested it, because it helped to work through their situation.
Is there a way that you can clarify?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I think we should put a
in
note
the
on
letter?
there. Yep.
And then the other thing is the verbiage. I know a sample version of the verbiage. Is there a way to simplify that a little bit more? If you need to refer to the policy somewhere, just to simplify it, because when you're in crisis, that's overwhelming, the sample letter. Because you just want to be like, okay, what is it that you do and do not want me to do? And I'm just trying to think about like a family in crisis getting language like that. They might be like, what does this mean? So if there's a way to do that, I understand we want to write professionally or whatever, but this is a little college level. So it would be really great if we could do that, knowing that these are families that are experiencing crisis. It would be helpful. And that if this information could also be sent to our local shelters and folks who are currently working with, I don't know if we have some way to send that out to those folks through our student family advocates, et cetera, who are working with those populations, maybe even annually, so that they know that, so that if there is a situation, they can advocate that way and be able to quote back what that specific policy is. That could be really helpful and empowering for families.
Can I ask a couple questions about the revocation issue? So, I see the guidelines laid out there about a certain number of tardies, certain number of absences. If you hit those targets, that's not targets, not a good word. If you hit those figures, is it automatic or is it discretionary with the district?
No, generally, if we have a student where we'd be considering, that's really based off our process on referring them to the county attorney for attendance support. So we do not generally move right at those attendance numbers. We've worked, to Latasha's point about by the time a family receives a letter from us from one of those, they've most likely went beyond that number of absences and had several conversations with support. So the same thing for a transfer piece. We wouldn't be green lighting a letter home or revoking a transfer just surely at those thresholds. Those are kind of guidelines for us. So
it's kind of driven by the idea that you can't refer it to the county attorney unless they're already in their home school. Is that right?
Right. So this would have to happen first. Yeah. So if it got to an extreme enough circumstance where it was going to end up to the county attorney, we wouldn't even be able to utilize that step until we had tried to problem solve the situation at the student's home school.
I guess one of the things I'm wondering about is if we have a student at Northwest Junior High who lives in the Kirkwood area and is having tardiness and absence problems, I'm not sure we're going to make those any better by moving them up to North Central.
Right.
Do you think it would be possible?
And I'm not sure it's going to be in their best interest to revoke those transfers.
Would it be possible, this is something we could at least talk about at some point, to just call both of those schools the home school for that area? You know what I mean? So instead of considering that to be a transfer, it would just be sort of, well, you have a choice of 2 home schools. Is that?
Well, I think that goes to the bigger conversation you guys have about what is their home school or what's their assigned school. So for me, if it comes to me about an administrator or a school saying we need to revoke the student's transfer, I'm going to have the same questions you as how is that student's situation going to be improved by putting them on a bus to North Central if they're not attending at a school closer to them. But I don't think I have the latitude to change what's their home school as assigned.
Right,
yeah.
So thank you, Matt, for the answers to these questions. And I just want to reiterate what you and I discussed on the phone along these lines, that that what Matt conveyed to me is that the best interest of the student would be looked at outside of these guidelines. So if a student lives next door to Northwest Junior High and they're having trouble getting there, that the administrators and whoever looks at these things, student family advocates or whatever, would have a discussion, and they wouldn't look at it through the lens of this policy, but they would say what makes sense for this child academically. If it doesn't make sense for them academically to be put on a bus if they can't, if they're having trouble as is, then that would be, that was my understanding. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah.
Related question. I mean, if a student in the Kirkwood area is, attending North Central and is having attendance issues, I mean, would there be a mechanism for maybe considering Northwest for that student, or is that just its typical transfer process?
I think there may be conversations with that building level team about if it would be in that student's best interest to consider a transfer to Northwest at that time. And I think with the flexibility we kind of demonstrated with those first 3 questions, we know we could
be
potentially
done
problem solve that situation. Yeah,
that could happen mid-year if that was considered to be advisable
right.
to address the situation. I did have another unrelated, so if this is still going on that topic.
I guess I just would have one further question. If there is some sort of disagreement with the school district and some parents regarding these issues, what would be the mechanism for the family to take it to the next level to get some outside, would it be the appendix 6 process, or is there a process in place where they can appeal if they think that what you're recommending is not what they think is best for their student academically?
I think we'd follow, a similar process we follow with other concerns. So generally with these, we do have a new scenario here, so I know that's going to be new for us this year. But generally with the attendance concerns or school assignments, we're very effective working through those at the building level. I receive a few of them and help problem solve. If they wouldn't be satisfied with my decision, then they would appeal that to Steve. Appeals from Steve then go through the process you just talked about. So, but otherwise, I have pretty good confidence we're going to be able to work through these from a lot of the conversations we've had with the principals this year. I think they understand the expectations from the community and the board, and how I've communicated that to them about what we'll need to work through and consider with those. But I'm sure as we get into this, there'll be some unique scenarios with it being our kind of first time having this back open again for a while.
I appreciate the flexibility you're extending to these students to help them succeed. Thank you.
Yep. 2 quick things for me. One, when I would assume at some point that we're going to need to have a discussion about voluntary transfers for the 18-19 year, because we've kind of left the table vote last time about the Liberty freshmen, and now maybe having to move up to sophomore as well as we go up. But when will you need us to have that discussion so that it can be on time for when people start making requests there?
Sure. The reason we that we settled on that December 1st date was because that's when we start doing scheduling of students when we return from winter break. So it would be nice to know at that time again, from that Thanksgiving to winter break time period, what the rules would be in place so we could communicate out to families. So as they start to register for classes, we can start to then shoot sections and staffing and that work. So I think roughly that same timing we had that conversation last fall, Paul, would be the best way.
Just want to make sure we're out in front. Yep. And then the second thing is just kind of in the same lines, and I actually asked Steve about this previously, but just wanted to point it out. We had some discussion before it when we had people that we pulled the consent agenda item and didn't allow some transfers, but there are some transfers listed on this charts that are, live in Kirkwood but are going to City or West or as freshmen, and those, just want to clarify, those are because they
hardship.
Yep, hardship, most likely.
Yeah, so if anything would be outside of what you guys had stipulated, it would have been through a hardship appeal, and those would have been, again, considered on the factors that we reviewed with you guys at that time.
I have a related question. So I guess I thought the reason that we were making particular rules for transfer into Liberty is because there's this weird situation where even though the building isn't full, if someone comes in as a freshman, they'll be putting that building over the capacity by the time they're a senior. But I guess I still thought, and maybe it's true and you could tell me, I guess I still thought that in general, there was a rule that people couldn't transfer into a building that would be over capacity that very year. Now, maybe I'm misunderstanding, but so I'm seeing an awful lot of transfers from Alexander into City as ninth graders, and I see City's figure being over its stated capacity, and it seems too big a number to think that those are hardships, but maybe they are. Or maybe am I misunderstanding the rule? Are people allowed to transfer into City now, even though it's over the capacity number?
Yeah, at one time we reviewed those capacity numbers with you and kind of showed you the data as far as where we were at with those, and I'm not sure that all of them felt neatly into those guidelines as we projected them, but I think we operated with the assumption from you that we were in the range, in the category of where we needed to be, and that it wasn't going to make sense to deny some outside of that. So we felt like we were in the appropriate range to accept those. There would be some in the hardship category too that would have applied through that mechanism. But yeah, we did come back with that kind of the goalpost idea again of a certain percentage. And then when we had those transfers come in, I think we came back December, January time and showed you the numbers and kind of looked for direction to move forward. And we felt like we got that from you guys to approve those and keep moving.
And just as a reminder, as part of that process, the board also voted to reopen City and West to open enrollment students. So at that time, the board's discussion was to both open City and West to open enrollment students and then to allow voluntary transfers.
Well, and I guess I thought that that by doing that, we were opening it to the extent there were seats. And maybe it wasn't clarified at the time, or maybe it's just too hard to figure out as the numbers are moving around. But boy, that number is significantly higher than what we say the seats are. So maybe that's something we could put on that same discussion when we finally have it for 18-19.
Well, and the Alexander one still would be a different scenario, right?
Well,
I mean,
once they're there, I think there's the idea that they can stay. But people come.
But the original idea, or the original concept of the Alexander students being able to transfer to City was kind of the outlier scenario too. So we had the conversation about the numerical amount of students we could fit, but then also this rule about what to do with Alexander and Kirkwood, and we were supposed to look at Alexander and Kirkwood without giving any credibility or any consideration to capacity. Those students were just to be allowed.
Except not from Kirkwood to Liberty, though, right?
Kirkwood's already assigned to Liberty.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Well, Kirkwood wants to go to West. There's a lot of room there, so. All right, I just got my head's suspended.
Yeah.
Trying to keep all the different permutations in my head. Well, the thing's well underway for next year, but I just trying to sort of spot issues that we might just need to think about if we want to stay consistent between the way we're treating different schools.
Okay, further discussion? All right, we're moving on to our operational work. Affirmative action, equity report.
This is one of the annual reports that the board receives, and he's going to cue that up.
Yes, so this is, every year we have to give a progress report, but every 2 years we have to give you an actual final report. And so in your board documents, you got that 23-page report that was considerably less than the 73-page document that we've done before. We just felt like we needed to have a cleaner version, not only obviously for our use, but also for the community's use, so they could navigate it more efficiently and be sure to hold us accountable as far as the goals and objectives that you have put before us. So I'll be really brief. Again, as I've said multiple times, that this is embedded in the district's mission statement to ensure that we have a curriculum, a rigorous and creative curriculum taught by diverse and professional caring staff. This is a part of the equity plan that really houses the objectives that you gave. I guess I've been here about 2.5 years now. Regarding ensuring that we had 15% across all employment groups as a goal for administrative support and also teachers. The hiring goals, we've been able to meet and eclipse some. For monitoring administration, we've been closer to our goal, obviously, than when you look at teaching staff. I would say that that number has steadily increased, but that's not a pat on the back. That's just stating that we've at least tried to address the numbers that we have currently with some of the retention. I did also add within the report some survey items from our administrators of color and also our teachers of color as far as support and also just general concerns about how they feel they're faring within our district. That information, I didn't put all the information on the report. I tried to coalesce it a little bit, but I'm hoping that that information will guide me in this work moving forward as far as how we're providing that support, and not only obviously for our administrators, but also for our teachers and support staff. This again just goes through some of the big numbers that I shared with you before. Again, these were concerning numbers that I want to put in here. And one of the things that we tried to do, and again, Maddie and Solomon is no longer with us, but my two interns really did a good job as far as taking the analysis that we had and ensuring that we dug a little deeper within some of the information. And so if you go here, you saw in the previous slide that we had over 20% from a support staff standpoint, but you can see within some of the identifiers there's still some areas where we can do better from an affirmative action standpoint. And so I just wanted to make sure that that information was very clear from a public standpoint, that it's not each of the different subgroups within those different employment categories that are over 20%. And again, just why staff diversity is important, even if the number of minority students in the district is not increasing. And so even if our schools, some more of our homogeneous schools, it's still important to get that diversity. It speaks to not only diversification of a growing diversity of our city and area, but also of the global community that we want to prepare them for. And so we want to ensure that they're having those diverse role models. The next steps is continue to monitor the data and progress of the goals in the upcoming year. We're switching some things around and are going to be a little more consistent as far as how we're pulling that data on a regular basis and ensuring that we're keeping an eye on it as we go through quarterly instead of just annually. Continuing to implement action steps from the equity plan. I don't have those within this document, but I've come before you before as far as progress for the equity plan and walk through some of the different things. There's an additional piece here that I was able to participate in, which was a training provided by the city, or the GARE, the Government Alliance on Race and Equity. They really talked about how this is a national problem. This is pervasive in many school districts throughout Iowa, but also nationally, and also within city governments and other governmental structures when you're talking about hiring administrators and personnel of color. And so one of the things it talked about was incorporating a racial equity toolkit, which I know that I've talked to you before about within our hiring practices and procedures.
Would you mind slowing down just a little bit?
Oh, okay.
Thanks.
Sorry. Just remembering in my head, trying to make sure I say it all. So one of the two things I was really learned and kind of had a deeper knowledge about was the racial and socioeconomic equity toolkit within our hiring practices and procedures to ensure that this information, ensure that our policies and practices are open, welcoming, and consider a diverse pool of applicants. And I think additionally, looking at ways that we can incorporate training programs within our district to ensure that if we're saying that these are the hiring standards, we're providing opportunities for people of color to have that training to then get jobs within our district. And we've had some of those. It's not a mentorship program, but it was something that GARE really identified. And I think it was Davenport in particular that was something that was key for them, the city of Davenport, not school district, in particular, that they would move forward on that would have some huge benefits for them. Any questions?
Can I jump in with one? So I'm looking at what page am I looking at? Page 17 of the PDF. And I'm just curious about it. It says there's a sentence that says salaries for teachers of color was on average $645 lower than white teachers' salaries. So part of me says, well, that doesn't look good. And you could imagine how that could result from bias or discrimination, right? On the other hand, I thought, well, if you're successful at what you're trying to do, probably most of our hiring is entry-level hiring, and if you're successful at increasing the percentage of minorities that we hire, maybe that would be part of the result, is that there'd be a disproportionate number of minorities would be entry-level and then would make less money. And so I'm just wondering, do you have any sense of sort of what's driving that and what was controlled for when they were looking at that number?
Yeah, no, and just note on the document, that's from the annual education report, and so that's not
Oh, it's
specific
not just
to
Iowa City,
Iowa City
okay.
Community School District, that's specific to Iowa in general. And so I couldn't necessarily give you that information from all the school districts, because we have a different protocol in relation to that.
I saw that one too, and had it underlined because I was concerned, and also in that same heading, it talks about they held at 1.5% more advanced degrees than their white counterparts. Now, excuse me, what would 1.5% more advanced degree equate to? I guess
That's
just an average, right?
It's just an average.
Certificates or something?
Yeah, it's just an average.
it's not like it's a BA and somebody has a master's.
No, and I have to go back as well to make sure that it's also not talking about, at times we have the master's plus 45 or additional hours that you can obtain. And so I'd have to look back on at that. That's the Department of Ed report that I pulled that information from. It's not specific to our school district, but I can look back and get that answer for you.
Right, and like Chris said, I'd be concerned too, just to make sure that we don't have some kind of built-in inequity just in our pay structure. I have commented. I've seen these for many years, and we're still struggling to make our goals, and I think everyone is. It's a challenge, and I'm curious too when positions become available, and we've had people come in and talk about our district as being a farm team, that it's where talent can kind of get started, but if they want advancement, they go elsewhere. Yeah. What steps we're putting in to one, make sure that the staff that we do have feels that there's chances for advancement, and that we're giving them the professional development and the support to stay here and to be successful. And what are we doing to make sure that that staff that we have entry level or at a assistant level for advancement? What are we doing to make sure that we're making enough advances that way so others looking at our district say, well, if I go there, I can see that people can matriculate up?
Well, and you really highlight an important indicator, because we won't, if where I'm out recruiting somebody to come over to the school district and they ask me about that question and I can't give them a solid answer, I think that's problematic, and they'll go another place that can give them a solid answer. And so there's two ways of answering that. One is around search committees, and so I know that we need to look at how we're training our search committees. Implicit bias was discussed at the GARE training, and it's a common discussion I have with Diane Finnerty and some other folks at the university around how to ensure that we make sure that our even our parents that are coming into some of these search committees, the community committees and other things, have that training. That's at that entry level that I think you initially spoke to. In regards to support with staff advancement, I think we have to be very intentional about building a network where our staff feel not only comfortable about, we're providing opportunity to get those advanced degrees, but also being clear about the expectations of what we're looking for when we're hiring principals and moving forward. Not meaning to throw Matt under the bus or bring his name up. He wasn't prepared for this, but Matt made a couple of comments recently. He was talking about how, while we consistently try to look for and make sure that we have candidates of color within our administrative hirings, sometimes it just seems like we're not clear about exactly the elements that we want from that school district perspective. And so if we're not providing the information to those candidates, it really kind of puts them, especially outside candidates, but also inside candidates, it kind of puts them in a bad spot when they're interviewing for jobs. And so one of the things I wanted to make sure that was in this report was that it was clearly stated within both the surveys from administrators of color and teachers of color that they want that support. And so if that's the case, and they've clearly stated that, and we put that in writing, we have to provide that support. And so I totally agree with you. That's something that we have to move as a next step moving forward into next year.
And also when we have a teacher as a sub, and they're a candidate that we're looking for. Are we targeting or making sure that these people that are filling in that subcapacity, are we missing opportunities to bring those candidates in as full-time instructors, or are you following or
Yeah, I think we are. I mean,
making like a short list of?
There are a short list, and I mean, if you see on the website currently, there's always going to be that. I'll speak to administrators in general. There's always going to be that administrator tab in there, and that's, I think I talked to you before about where we send administrators in general when I'm at conferences or other places where I can say, hey, fill this information out. When we're going through a hiring process, we can pull that information back up instead of me consistently calling you every single day to make sure that they're job posting. Subs is a little bit different because you have to understand that from a certified teaching standpoint, not all subs have that certified teacher certificate and so or degree, and so it is a little difficult from that standpoint. But if there are individuals, not only from a sub standpoint, but also from, I remember the first year I was here, we had 3 or 4 outstanding candidates that we wanted that were student teachers within the district, but we lost them to bigger places. And so that's where we needed to have a better system in place. And I'm hoping that with this new year and then again the foundations that we've done before, that we'll have that system in place. So it's not so much just wait a little bit. We're working on it. It's more like, this is a system we have in place. We're going to run you through the system, and there'll be a potential job for you at the end of the road right away. I think that giving candidates of color that are hot commodities across the nation, that surety, I think, will provide a different element within our candidate pool, but also our hiring as well.
So Kingsley and Steve and Matt, I've asked you guys this prior, but I thought I would bring it up again. Can you just explain how many, when we're on the hiring at Liberty, the new staff, obviously there's staff that has to come from other schools within the district, but our staff is very not of color there.
Yeah, and so, and Matt, you can answer this as well. I'll let you answer it.
Sure. So with Liberty, this year and then also next year, we have the challenge of taking some of our existing staff and figuring out how to staff Liberty High School with being overstaffed then at West High with losing students. And we think we went through a successful process doing that this year. Out of the 35 teaching staff members we hired at Liberty, 25 came from West High. So we were kind of working with our internal pool there. And we did take 2 minority candidates from Dr. Schultz that were on staff at West High in that process of the 25. And I think Dr. Schultz had let me know today when they hired back 5 staff members they had from bits and pieces, they were able to bring 2 staff from diverse backgrounds on board there too. So when you look at the whole picture between Liberty and West, we did increase in a couple there, but that's part of our challenge is increasing, obviously, to the problem Kingsley's articulating here is how do we get more diversity in our candidate pool and then also into those positions in our district. But that'll be a continued work in progress for us. I think one thing Amy and I were mentioning over here, another support mechanism we have for people or a draw to people is some of the mentoring work we're trying to do with our new administrators as well. And we tried to provide several layers of support to those new administrators from coaching on site to assigning them a mentor in district and then also a mentor through the State Professional Organization of School Administrators of Iowa. So if we didn't have maybe a candidate or another principal of color that they could be matched up with or from a diverse background, somebody somewhere in the state, we were able to hopefully make that link and then to provide them that on-site support for being new to Iowa City or potentially the state or whatever issues may come up during the transition there, so they felt like we were invested in them and in that process. So those are a couple things. I know, Paul, I got away from your question there, and I don't know if I fully answered it, but that was what I thought of, I guess.
I think the other commitment that I would share that we've made with the admin team, our new admins, is that we're mimicking the mentoring process that we mimic for teachers, which is both first and second year teachers have a mentor assigned to them, and so we are emulating that with our admins too. So it's not just that first year, but it's the first 2 years to again mimic what we expect with our teaching candidates.
I have a couple of quick comments. One, I think it's great when we do mentorship, but I think especially when it comes to people of color, we forget about the need for community mentors because you guys can mentor them all day within their workplace, but they still have to live here in our community And that's one of the driving reasons most people leave, is because they don't feel connected to the community, which we know that that's an issue even for our students about how they feel connected to the school and the community. So we can't forget that. That keeps being left off the table. The other thing is, you know, I was reading an article from UNI and the work that they're doing about trying to recruit students of color, specifically from the local school districts, to come into UNI, to specifically come and try to work in the district there. And so it'd be interesting, our partnering, or, you know, 35 students coming out of UNI, out of the University of Iowa. They have the world in their hands. They don't have to stay here. So what can we offer them that they would want to stay here? Because the likelihood of them actually getting an, I don't know if you guys call them an internship or practicum or what, for teachers, but that they would stay here, right? They need a hook to stay here. Other than that, this is a requirement. I'm checking off and I'm out the door. One thing, when I have talked to other people of color who've interviewed here, have said that in the process, they never see any people of color. In reference to when they're being interviewed, they're usually only interviewed by our white staff, which is fine. But I think also as a person, you want to see about some diversity even in the decision making, and that's not seen. And so that's something that people have always, I've heard that comment over and over again. I was like a little nervous, and it's like, is there other folks here? And so I think that those are some things that was kind of sticking out to me about how we keep people here. What is our hook for people wanting to stay in our community? Is one, there are people who already are here that would like to be working in the school district, and we just need to find ways to help them get that education that they need. Even if it is being a sub, as Phil was mentioning, I talked with Jane about this a while ago, what are some other things that we can do to help them through that 2-year process to become a certified teacher? Yeah. So I just think the more creative we can get about, because you're right. I mean, as long as we have 82% of teachers in the United States as white and female, you're right. That other percentage, whether they're male or people of color, they can go wherever they want and can get a better paying job as well. So we need to have multiple layered ways about our recruitment and as well as our retention of these folks and providing that support for our staff, because they do sometimes feel like that they're sitting in situations where there's some implicit bias training issues going on and microaggressions. Iowa City has lots of microaggressions, maybe Iowa in general. And so how do we address microaggressions within our district that are happening to our staff of color, which is some of the areas where they're feeling some of the least amount of support, is how do I deal with when this is said and I just have to take it? And that eats at you, and that eats at their health, their mental health, and their ability to teach our students. And then we call them unqualified. So I have a problem with that. So the things that we can mitigate, let's try to do that.
I would just make 2 quick comments. So we're looking. We've had some preliminary internal conversations around grow your own programs, which I think you were mentioning with the UNI. We're going to continue to make that a huge push, especially for this year, especially, again, putting that information in this document that's a concern. The other part, I totally agree with you as far as those community role models as well. We did focus primarily this year on kind of that internal community. And so we had multiple meet and greets, not only with multiple. There's only 2 meet and greets for teachers of color, and I think maybe 3 or 4 off the top of my head, meet and greets for administrators of color, because we want to kind of build that internal camaraderie, family, at least for me, family. I guess I'm being weird, for me, family, but them not. But family atmosphere, committed atmosphere, and then we would reach out to the community in that way. And wanted to do it in a more reasonable and I lost my train of thought, but immediate way from that perspective as well. And so that's definitely what I put in the report as far as a concern moving forward with the outside community as well.
I'd just like to thank you for the report. And, we've kind of gotten away from this, but linking everything that we talk about to our strategic goals. And one of the things that, we learned with Leadership for Student Learning is to set stretch goals and celebrate achievement, no matter how small, or what gains we've made, no matter how small, and continue to refocus our efforts on achieving those goals. I remember specifically when the former Human Resources Director rolled out some of the game plan for this and how it's transitioned into your role now, Kingsley. I think that when we look at our student climate survey, some of those questions are really notable about having. Do you feel you have a mentor that understands you? Do you feel that your teacher understands you? Do you, so on and so forth. Some of those questions are pretty telling. And I think that the gains that we're making are great. I think that, what's the goal, 2020? To hit 15% across the board, 2020 is the goal year-wise, is that correct?
No, it's 5-year plan. So no, it was 3-year plan. So not this year, but next year.
We got a ways to go.
Yeah.
But I just hope that critical third part of our strategic goals that we can. I hope we can achieve this one. I think students should have a learning environment where the people that they are relying on for their education, their administration, and staff that take care of the building should be representative of our student population. And every bit that we can get closer to that is excellent. So thank you for the work you're doing. And we got a ways to go, but I really I think that this directly will impact a portion of our student climate survey.
Can I ask one question?
Yeah.
And this is kind of related back to our annual progress report. The area where we are, the colloquialism, killing the game when it comes to administrators of color is deans of students. Mm-hmm. And that's a little problematic in my soul. And the reason why is knowing that we have the discipline issues, the disproportionality at the levels that we do, and knowing that the people who are disciplining them at the highest levels seem to only be mostly people of color in the Iowa City Community School District. That correlation sits uneasy with me in lots of ways. And so, we have disproportionality, and then we're almost over proportionate in people of color providing discipline to kids of color. I don't know if that's intentional, but that is something that concerns me. I'm always concerned when we have some amazing folks doing amazing work, but a lot of them, when we have people of color, are support staff. And so, and that's important. They should have those roles, and I absolutely want those folks who have those roles as deans of students, but something about those two pieces together, I don't know, it just doesn't always sit so well for me, especially knowing, and I know that's secondary because we don't have those folks sometimes in elementary, but the other thing is that we should have a hard push for elementary teachers of color, given the research that the impact on children of color of not having teachers of color happens in elementary school about their dropout rate and their connection. And that's where we lack them the most. I think we have some schools that have, like Kirkwood, that have gone above and beyond and are determined to do that for their students. And so many accolades go to their principal and the decision-making staff over there for doing that. But it makes a huge impact on kids of color about who's teaching them. Not saying that, teaching well is one of the main things that drives student achievement, and we know that, but also being able to have mentors that look similar to you. And they don't just have to be black teachers. We need teachers from all different backgrounds because we have students from all different backgrounds, so that's important. So I just wanted to, that's just something that I noticed in the report, was that where we're missing the mark in other areas, that was like 60% or something, which is only a couple of positions, but still.
Do we have any data along these lines from other UEN districts, especially nearby ones like Cedar Rapids?
Say that again.
Data from other UEN districts about how well they're doing?
We don't.
Especially nearby, I know they're all kind of different, but.
Yeah, we don't formally. I know we do talk from time to time and talk about some of the things that, they're able to do or hire. And, I won't say that there's some districts that are able to get some good candidates in there. I know that Waterloo made some. We didn't have a whole bunch of administrative hires this year, but they were able to get. They had a large turnover, and they were able to get some administrators of color that year. And so, I'll be honest with you. I mean, personally, I want to be the best. I want this to be an opportunity and a place where people of color across all the employment groups want to come. And so it's very keen on my mind that that's happened at Waterloo. And so I'll be talking with them as well as some of the other union districts, but it's not formally in this report.
Yeah,
we do
Cedar
talk
Rapids
from
I
time
wonder
to time.
about, especially just because we're kind of competing, with them for the same group of people.
Something
who are
I
right
think
here.
about on a regular basis.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Can I just ask one quick question? Sorry, Lori, if yours is about something more important. I just have a clarifying question on the longer document. So I don't know if you want to pull it up, but on page 12 is the one that I'm referring to. It has the breakdown of the teachers. And just a quick question, why in the junior high and high school is the first one listed elementary teachers?
Yeah, so that was a question that my intern asked, and there are some teachers that have gotten additional certification to teach in the junior high, but when we pulled the information is when they initially came into the district, and I didn't want to change that information because changing that information, we have to look at how that would affect every other person within this. And so that's why you see elementary teachers under junior high. I'll make a notation of that, but it's because some of them do have that elementary background.
Kingsley, I'm just curious, when we've lost candidates of color and when we've lost employees of color, can you tell me some of the places that they've gone?
Okay, well, locally and nationally. Locally, some have left for other districts in the area. Some have left for Cedar Rapids, some have left for Waterloo. There is a particular situation, I know that was an unintended consequence of the Bell schedule change. I know that we lost a teacher of color that, I didn't even think about at the time, but they were commuting from Cedar Rapids, and because of the change, they weren't able to make that commute any longer, even though they loved working at the particular school they were at. From a national standpoint, those candidates I was talking about, in general, not only within our student teaching population at the time, but also going to conferences, LA, Las Vegas, New York. Some of the graduates have amazing qualifications and are a part of programs that particularly have them go back to the areas that they have come from as well. And so there's just some interesting things that we're competing against, and I think it's a tough thing to work on, but I think we can work on it if we can build structures systemically around what we want to see and where we want to go. And so the foundation of this work has been important. I would say that the next 2 years are even more important as far as that element and that recruitment piece to really pull people in that you have mentioned, and also Director Deloach has mentioned as well. If 2 years I'm coming back to you and we're still around 5.8, 6%, I would hope you would be asking a lot of questions as far as what I'm doing and whether or not it's being effective.
So my next point would be, when we find out that they're going to Waterloo, Cedar Rapids, LA, New York, wherever, maybe ask them, or maybe we need to find out what's Cedar Rapids, what's Waterloo, what are they doing that causes this person to want to work there instead of here? I'm sure you're doing some of that already, but maybe even more formally have a process of what is it exactly that has led the person to that decision. And if they've got a program with their young people in their community that those students are going back to at LA or New York, wherever you mentioned, then let's get that program here.
Yeah, so where that Grow Your Own program is so important because we have a lot of students. There's a student that we actually both know that has left and gotten her teaching degree that I'm, creeping her Facebook daily to make sure that we can, it's an awkward thing to say publicly, sorry, but to make sure that we can bring that particular student back because she's phenomenal, and I think she's going to be a phenomenal teacher, and so we'll work on those things moving forward.
And to formalize the program too, so that they feel like there's a structure, like they're really wanted back here.
Is this topic formally incorporated into exit interviews for people who leave?
So we do have exit interviews. One of the things that every time that an individual resigns or leaves the district, we send them an email as far as having them fill something out. Now, one of the things that happens is that it only occurs when their resignation is then formalized. And so if they resign like 2 weeks ago, but the letter doesn't go before the board until 2 weeks later, that's only when I send their exit letter. And so that was one of the things that we saw that we need to clean up, and how our principals can help kind of carry that water a little bit and send that extra survey information ahead of time. Not only from that standpoint, but this is also the first time that we did a survey specifically for administrators and teachers of color to get some of the information that you're talking about. And so we haven't gone through all of it. I just wanted to get that general information to you, but that will again build some of the structures around how we support and how we look for candidates in the future. Thank you.
Discussion? No? Okay, next up, we have our playground equipment Shimmick Elementary project update. Steve?
And last night, Kingsley and Dwayne hosted a meeting for the discussion of the playground at Shimmick, and they're going to give us an update on that conversation and some of the work that they've done since then.
You want to start?
Sure. Let's get that ready. So again, one of the things that was important, and I know that was discussed at the community comment, was kind of where we're at from a process standpoint based on the May 23rd work session. There was a lot of scheduling issues that occurred that were documented, again, by community commenters. And we wanted to make sure that we had all the information went before. And I would honestly say that we also, I also made a direct request that I wanted to be at this particular meeting. And as many of you know, I was at AVID conference last week. And so this was the first time that we could actually meet with all the information as far as the additional modifications and all the pricing structures. It was made clear to us earlier that, without that information, we wouldn't necessarily go forward in a good way. And so we thought it was important to make sure that we had all the information to folks, and even though that information has come at such a late time period. We did make some, so when we met with the individuals, or Tony Mucusack with Abundance Playground and John McGovern, I'm not sure the agency off the top of my head that he works for, but he really deals with the engineered wood fiber. We had some discussions as far as what could we do differently within the playground structure to ensure that we're increasing the overall accessibility of individual navigating a wheelchair across the playground structure, but also ensuring that with the engineered wood fiber that we have a maintenance schedule and some of the other things that are important from that standpoint. And so we still have details to work out. Again, I think Dwayne and I have physically met about this twice over the last month. A lot of it's happened over email and happened over a phone conversation just because of varying schedules. But last night, and I'll have the minutes hopefully done here soon, we wanted to send that, give it to the group to look at, discuss. We received a number of concerns. I'll let Dwayne tell you about his drive back and some changes that he thought would be good for the community group as a whole.
Well, I thought it might make a little sense to talk about how we got to where we are from what was approved initially and approved by the board. And I'd ask these three folks at the end to turn around, and I'll use a pointer on this diagram here so that everybody can see it. But this is the original play. There's actually three large components. This is one of the three. The other two have not been affected by any of this. So this is the main basic structure. And what I want to point out to you is that there's a ramp right there, and it's on the back side, and you come up this ramp to a platform. And from this platform, you go up a set of steps to another platform, up to this circular slide. There's steps. And then there was this big kahuna, the fish, which is giving us the most consternation, to this deck, okay? And there's a double slide going down. So I attended 2 of the playground committee meetings and, of course, the work session, and I heard several things. One, how do you get, there's no accessibility to this platform, okay? And if you did get up there and you came down, you'd have to go all the way around the playground to get to that point of entry. So point of entry, point of exit was a contention that was brought up many times, okay? Accessibility to the ramps or the platforms is another point of contention. The surface is another one, so I'll try and address all three. I'll have to use this. This was what we proposed to modify. Now, what I'm going to point out to you is that The ramp is now in the front and not in the back. And the reason the ramp is in the front is because along this edge right here is where that zero entry feature is. And I've got a little picture I can show you in just a second how that works, but I think everybody appreciated that, and that's a plus. It was a good thing to do. So if you notice too, this point of entry is much closer to that exit point. So the distance between the two is about as close as we can get them. The other thing I'd point out that these ramps are 12 feet long, and the reason they're 12 feet long is because ADA code calls for 1 inch of rise per foot of run. So for every foot you travel, you have to go up an inch. So this first landing is a foot off the ground. The second landing is 2 feet off the ground. This goes up to 3 and then up to 4. And from here you go from 2 to 3 because that's also a 12-foot ramp. I'm going to zoom in here and show you a little more detail. But I will point out that this feature, this merry-go-round feature, the swing set are all future things. They're not part of the basic playground that's being provided. This structure over here is, and it's hard to see, but there is what we call a transfer station. On the back side of this, there's a step and a place where a person in a wheelchair, a child in a wheelchair with help can get up to that platform, okay? So we'll go to the next slide. A little closer. So what we did was we flipped this whole thing. We flipped the ramp from back here to the front. So we flipped it forward. And then we took this structure and actually rotated it because this, in the original one, it was going off to the side over here. It was even further away. So we rotated this structure so that this would be as close as possible to this access point. That was one contention. I thought it was a pretty good solution. But the downside of that was we took the big kahuna out so that a person in a wheelchair could get all the way up to this platform, okay? A disabled person most likely would still need help getting up here, but climbing stairs, I've been told, is not such a bad thing. It's good exercise. There are a lot of other activities around here, climbing exercises, there's ground activities, there's these kind of play boards. We did, after last night, agree to meet with a couple of parents again. We might do that tomorrow and talk about how we might add a few of these components, okay? A simple thing to do. There's a little better picture of that transfer station. It's hard to pick up on that, but I'm sorry it's not better. The spider web thing is part of the basic package. These ground activities are part of the basic. These climbing activities back here are as well. So I want to take you to the next picture. That's the big kahuna at Alexander. I guess when I put it on there, it really blew it up, but that's what that is. That's the same fish, only yellow. So you see this platform here at Alexander. This is 2 foot high, and this is at 4 foot, so that the total rise for that big kahuna is 2 feet, and it's important to note that. So I'm going to take you back to the other slide. The other thing I would point out, it's a good time to bring it up, there's a raw edge right here, all the way along that asphalt. That needs to be fixed. That needs the zero entry, just like we're going to do at Shimmick. We're going to go back to Horn. We're going to fix that one. We're putting one in with the Coralville Central Playground. We're putting one in with the Weber Playground that we're doing this summer. And we're putting one in with the Hoover Playground we're doing this summer. So they already have them, or will have them soon, okay? I saw the one at Hoover just last week, and it's already in. It looks great. So maybe I'll divert for just a second and show you that detail. Basically what it is if not unlike a wading pool that you might take your kids to, where if this is level, then you start walking down as you get it. The concept here is that this material is that engineered wood fiber. It will compact over time, and we will get a compactor. It's a really everyday contractor tool. It's nothing special. It's a vibrating compactor. They have them all over town. We rent them all the time. We just don't own one, but we'll buy one. Anyway, when you compact this surface over time, it can drop, so the level might be here until you put more on top of it. Well, this allows you to keep going down until you reach that surface. If there were a square curb right here and the level had dropped to here, there might be a 2-inch, 3-inch, 6-inch drop from the sidewalk to the fill. If you saw the video of Horn, that's exactly what was out there. I saw that and I just said, there's got to be a better way. This is the better way, and I think everybody appreciates that. So let's go back, your big kahuna. So I get a lot of drive time, and it's good for me. I get time to think, like Kinkley said, and at my age, I need time to think. So on the back of this particular structure, you see that little red item there? It's just like that one. It's an observation post. This morning I asked Ben to check with our playground supplier and the installers. If we remove that piece of equipment right there, could we then attach the big kahuna at that point? And what it will take, this is at 3 foot, remember, big kahuna only goes 2. So we're gonna have to, back here in the back, we're gonna have to build a 1 foot high platform, maybe a step, maybe not, attach big kahuna to that, to this. We already own the big kahuna, it's being delivered next week. All we gotta do is put the deck in and make it work. I think the majority of the Playground Shimmick Committee will be very happy with this improvement. No one wants to deny anybody access to this platform. I didn't hear that at all. It isn't what they planned, but I don't think in the end anybody really chose to deny anybody access, but they wanted that one piece of playground equipment. So we can just put it on back here, and you can use the big kahuna to get to this platform. You can use this climbing device, or you can walk up the ramp. So that is a proposed solution. I think if you are all favorable to it, it's going to take 7 weeks to get this ramp and some of the other components. We had to change this slide a little bit to make it more accessible. There's a couple other small elements, but it'll take 6 to 7 weeks, which is the beginning of school. And what we told the committee last night is that all of this, all of that, all of this, all of that, all of this will be up, installed before school starts. We'll have to put a small barricade right here on that landing. This structure can't be put up until this structure is here. There's just no tolerance in that stuff. We could predetermine, put it in place, but you run a risk of not having a perfect fit. So the smart thing is to put a barricade here, wait for this piece and this other small pieces to show up in 6 or 7 weeks, get the installers back, and then install this one piece. So there's a good 75–80% of the equipment that will be up and will be accessible. And the other point I wanted to make is that zero entry runs like this, runs parallel to these playgrounds. So you'll be able to access this from the zero entry. You'll be able to get around this pretty well. You'll be able to get to that transfer ramp. It'll be, I think, a much better setup. They get everything they asked for. I'd answer any questions you might have.
Well, first thing, I want to thank Ben and Dwayne. The zero entry is tremendous, and the fact that you're going back to existing schools and bringing those up, that going forward, this will be our standard with playgrounds. I'm assuming that that's going to be what we're going to put in is great. And I went to Alexander today specifically after the discussion last night just to see the flounder, the big kahuna, the fish. And, it was referred to as like a rope net. It really isn't a rope net, because when you're on the thing, essentially it's the spine of the fish. It's the skeleton that you climb, and there's holes.
Did you try it?
Yes, I did. I did the flounder. I didn't get a T-shirt or anything that said I survived, but I did do it. And there was some bird poop at the beginning, so I walked it. I didn't crawl it or anything. And when I got to the end of it, I got shocked because I had created enough static electricity walking across, and I don't know if that was an omen or what. But I did go and look at it, and as a matter of fact, when I left, there were 3 kids and a parent that came, and the first thing they went to was the flounder. So it is a draw that way, and that. In the discussion, and first off, I want to say on this that I think it's important that the community understand that our playgrounds are public spaces. They're like, and they are also an extension of the classroom. I mean, it is just like curricular material for a school, And I think it's important that we do everything in our power to make sure it's inclusive and involving, and especially in our bond language. We talk about inclusion, safety, and health. That falls all into what we're discussing here with playgrounds. And what was coming out in some of these discussions too, and I just want to say too, if there's any venom from the community, it should not be directed at parents of students with disabilities. If you want to direct it at anybody, direct it at me. I'll take it. But, you know, we have, and I know at one meeting there was a discussion and we said we're building a playground for 240, not for one. And the commenter said we make it for 241. And I think that's where we're headed. And I sometimes the making of the sausage is kind of ugly, but when we get there, hopefully it's a much better product. But on the ramps, one thing that came out in the discussion and what was presented is that with the one where you're going to and you're going to add the flounder, having a set of steps there close instead of having to go back to the ramp if a student gets out of their chair. And I know we've kind of talked about that now. And you've talked about removing, you know, part of the structure there and having steps or some way of getting up. I think that, and I know that you're saying it's too expensive to put like the steps in the middle of the ramp, but I think that I would urge you to just check with the manufacturer on, since that's one of the portions that we're adding and everything, it's possible to put a step there, because then it could give also just the ability to kind of transfer across that way.
And just before we lose the thought, is it possible to cut that in half? You know, it's 2 6-foot ramps. Yes, but you're going to have to put a level ramp or level platform. There's no way to attach the stair to the ramp itself. It has to have a platform with posts, so you have the structure. It's just more cost. But I also wanted to point out that last night we told the group that we're going to probably spend close to $10,000 making these improvements. And that's not in our playground fund, but we certainly have funds available in our ADA fund in Pebble. We have a life cycle for ADA. We're going to put a chairlift in at Lincoln City High this summer. A couple other things we're doing. So we do make ADA improvements. So I think it's a legitimate expense from that fund. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Sure.
And the other thing you could do is we could take a couple of these climbing elements here, and we could look at putting that same transfer station here so you could have direct access. So we're going to look at that too.
Okay.
And the other thing that was made, you know, the activities that take place on these ramps, I think it's hard to see how many activities there really are, but that's what we're going to dig into tomorrow.
Great. And another thing that was brought up, and I know we discussed this so for the public to know, that there's been concerns raised that going from this play element over to the other one, and I think there's another photo that might show it a little,
Actually, it's in the other PowerPoint. I'd have to load it up. It's not in this one.
Oh, okay, well.
Off to the left over here is a.
Well, it would be what we discussed earlier about if you wanted to go from here over to the other part of the play structure to make sure that.
Sure.
That.
You're talking about.
Right.
So what Phil's talking about is getting back to these elements back here.
Right, and you know, we're looking at it now, there's nobody there, but if we've got a student with a chair that wants to get over here, we just don't want it to be that it can be organic. He can kind of traverse and go over this way and not just be given one path to go and kind of get around. There should be a way to, you know, go from this area over to that area without having to go through kids hanging on obstacles or going over the stumps and those things, to where there's a legitimate opportunity to get through,
right,
and give it just more natural, you know, play and things that way.
So as I told you earlier, this is kind of a pictorial. I don't know that the distance between these.
Just so you know, it's on your, you know, it's part of the discussion, and you're looking at that going
But
forward.
it leads to the other part of the discussion, though. Like a kid in a wheelchair trying to get back into this area, we're going to make sure there's enough spaces between the equipment to do that. But the second part of that, and probably the most important part, is the surface itself. So wood fibers can be compacted. They need to be raked. They need to be watered. They need to be compacted on a regular basis. That's the discussion we had with John McGovern when he was here. I assured him we'd come up with a plan. We will. I don't think it's a plan that's going to happen overnight. We're going to have to experiment with it this summer, see how it works, but get it in place, and it'll be part of our playground policy. And I don't know if Kingsley mentioned it, but we're going to work that over too, try to make it more inclusive. So that can all be a part of that process. It's just not going to happen. This is the first one where we've really done this. It's a learning situation, and we'll make the best of it.
Right, and part of that discussion last night was, and I know you weren't able to provide us with any type of cost comparison, but definitely we need to look at the long-term life cycle costs of the engineered wood fiber as opposed to the rubberized surface. Understanding the initial cost is very expensive going in, but if it's a 25-year investment, we easily make that decision on sports turf all the time and say, oh yeah, it's much cheaper to put in the sports turf field because long-term the maintenance is much less. So we need to have some really solid numbers on that because it is a much better surface, and that would be coming out of the Pebble Fund as opposed to general fund dollars to pay for staff to maintain this and that. And if you go back to the
Hey, Phil,
Alexander,
would it be possible, I know you're having a lengthy discussion with Dwayne, if you could wrap it up a little bit, as well as could you speak into your mic? Because it's a disadvantage to those who are on television. They can't hear when you walk over to
I apologize, and I'm sorry that I don't mean to be dominating the conversation, but these are some issues that have been raised.
It's important. I just also want to allow that other board members get
and I'm close to wrapping up. And now I kind of forgot where I was.
Well, let me help you. In my previous position, I've done several of the rubber playgrounds, but the reason they're more cost expensive is because they have to have concrete underneath of them, and they have to have proper drainage. Otherwise, you get mold and all kinds of bad things. Okay, they do take some effort to keep them clean, keep them free of weeds. Weeds will grow up in the cracks. So there is some maintenance involved with that. The other part of that, we did tell the group last night that this particular playground, it's about $50,000, rough numbers, a little less, to use the engineered wood fiber. To do this same playground, this very same playground with a rubber surface, putting the concrete or doing the things I just mentioned, is a $201,000 add to the 50. Okay, so that's a considerable cost. That's a lot of money times 20 playgrounds, and it's something we have to look at. I promised we would. We're going to look at the life cycle. I already have some life cycle, but I wasn't prepared to give them last night. We need to review them. And John McGovern provided me with some numbers and his thoughts. So we'll put that together in a coherent way so that it applies to what we're doing and the type of construction we have to do. So that's forthcoming, but I don't think that we have the funds or the time to do that on this particular playground.
Well, but it needs to be done. And when I was at Alexander today, the engineered wood fiber was not anywhere near where it needs to be at any of the play structures because of compaction loss.
Right.
I mean, it was way too low.
And I couldn't agree with you more.
Right, but we have, and I think that's a serious discussion because when we're looking at general fund, that's our employee, teachers, pay, and if it's something that comes out of Pebble, understandable. It's this is a long-term thing, but we easily do that on the play fields. And I mean, people may not know, and this is something we got in IPM, is that we put herbicide on our sports turf to keep the weeds from growing. Figure that in. But anyway, I am very much encouraging you to work with our ADA people and make sure that, I would like that when this is done, people with access challenge or with accessibility challenges would say, hey, let's go to Shimmick. And wouldn't that be something for the Shimmick community to be able to say that, okay, we're the one that people want to go to? And like I say, our playgrounds are like parks. The whole community has access to them. And on that point, the safety and security is very important because it's not only during the school day, it's after the school period. And I know we briefly touched last night on the police report and things like that, but I think it's extremely important going forward that we avail ourselves to the free services provided by the police department for giving us the safety review because the 10-plex move to Shimmick was for safety, and that's a temporary construction period. But the playground is supposed to last 25 years, and if it's 25 years in a position that isn't the most safe, does that outweigh the fact that we're doing this move and putting it in a position where it isn't?
Well, I do have to address one thing, and we had a speaker here address, that very issue, and I told the group last night, I've taken the same training, and I have. It was 16 years ago. But it's a group that does educational design. It's safety through educational design. And for example, one thing that came out of those changes we made 16, 17 years ago was the double door entryways, diverting people through the office, security, all that. Where you put bushes on the outside of a building, all that's part of that safety concern. You don't want to put large bushes that people can hide behind. Those are some simple things we learned that we put in practice every day. So I didn't mean to say that we have more experience than maybe the police department, but we have had experience. I have personally had experience through that program and making those kind of design changes, and we do it every day. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Right.
Okay,
And my last question.
Phil, just for point, can you wrap it up because other people would like to comment?
Yes, President, I'm telling you this.
Okay.
And it's with the superintendent, and it's just because I had some discussions with administrative staff at other buildings in our district, and there were questions that they had that they were not aware of who our ADA compliance officer was in the district. And just for last time clarification, in some of the correspondence from the principal at Shimmick referred to Ben Grimm as our ADA compliance officer in some email exchanges. Just want to make sure that the public's aware that Kingsley is our ADA compliance officer for the district, and that any questions concerning that go to his office and everything that way.
And we will make sure to clarify that with the team.
Perfect. Thank you.
For just a point of order and time, if you have something really quick, you might have to end up submitting it in writing. Seriously, we really need to move on. It's getting late. If you have something really quick, I don't mind. And I feel like it's unfair because
It is.
we had someone take up such a significant amount of time, and so that's going to be on me because I tried to wrap that up. If you have a comment, please go ahead. But I do ask that people keep down some of the brevity of what they are trying to say.
I'll do my best. First off, I just to review where the district is involved in this. This goes back to an attempt to equilibrate playground opportunities at all of our schools. There's vast disparities between the PTO abilities at School A versus School B throughout our district, and the district's responsibility here is to our hope is as we go through the life cycle, or as we go through the playground replacements over the next couple decades, a little bit at a time, to provide some level of equity in the play structures. But the PTOs, of course, have the ability to add on to those things and select other components that they wish to add on. That is correct, right, Dwayne? Yes. Okay, thank you. So, district funds aren't unlimited. And I think that you've put together a very comprehensive playground layout here. I think that sitting through the meeting last night, which was a productive one, it was a productive meeting, and I was happy to hear you talk about the zero entry and the plans to bring that to other schools, because that is important that we have that available. And make all of our playgrounds accessible, and I think it goes with the plan here, with the whole reason why we're involved in this. I'm sorry, Vice President Deloach. The engineered wood fiber, I look forward to us not renting a compactor anymore and having a plan for the care of the engineered wood fiber. Certainly a $150,000 or $200,000 ad for the rubberized surface. I think if a PTO wants to do that, that's great. I think if the district's going to do it, I think that we need to be looking at how we can equitably afford playgrounds at every single school across the district. You know, being part of the Shimmick community for nearly a decade, we are a unique bunch, and we do have differences, you know, as with any community, and it's been good to hear voices. I think that we're like this close to where the community can move on, recognizing that the PTO can make additions going forward. The kids did select the elements that are out there. The Big Kahuna, and you know, this is like the GOAT discussion. I can't keep saying Big Kahuna without kind of smiling a little bit or thinking about Director Hemingway running on a Big Kahuna yesterday. But that's beside the point, or today, excuse me. The Big Kahuna, I think, is important. We've already purchased it, and I hope that we use it. I think that's a creative way to implement it and to add it to the setup. The individuals involved in the playground committee have worked very, very hard, all of them. Even if there are differences in opinion, I think that we're at a place where hopefully we can move on. I do think that overall it was a very productive discussion yesterday. It does, as one side comment, I would like to say that I think it should be mostly Shimmick individuals involved in the conversation. Some individuals from outside the Shimmick community attended, but that is what it is. So I certainly hope that we can get this done by school. Thank you for showing how much of that is going to be done by school with this plan, and I hope the Shimmick Playground Committee is ready to move forward. I also look forward to hearing the suggestions, especially around that one ramp with the tic-tac-toe area. I don't disagree that we could have more activities there, but budgetary constraints are, of course, part of that discussion as well.
Well, thanks. One quick clarification on the policy itself. The PTOs are free to raise funds and add additional components. What the policy asks or requests is that it not be added to the primary structure, that they be standalone components. And the reason for that is to demonstrate equity across the district. If we start adding 5 or 6 components to the basic structure, then the group next year is going to say, hey, but, you know, so we're trying to keep that basic structure within the budget, within constraints, allowing the PTO then to come back and add other components around that playground. So that's just a point of clarification. That's what the intent of the policy is today.
I have 3 quick questions.
There's no such thing as 3 quick questions.
Well,
Go
maybe
ahead.
you're right. We'll see.
Go ahead.
The zero entry thing, which sounds great, are we now saying, or are we now realizing that is part of what is legally required to make it, except, you know, ADA compliant?
Yeah. I don't believe so. I just think it's an improvement that benefits our children and our community. It's not required, but it certainly is a good way to handle the problem. You could go back and keep filling that in every week and keep it at the level, but this ensures that even if it's neglected for a few weeks and it compacts, that you still have zero entry.
Okay. Can you just remind me why we had to tear down the old playground before building the new one?
Well, first of all, getting access to this with equipment is difficult. It was the only way really into that site was through that old playground. You could go around the backside of the building and through the trees and get to it.
It seemed like there was a lot of space between the building and the playground.
We don't have time. I go back and pull up a diagram and show you how that lays out. But the real issue is that playground is approaching its life cycle, its age. It was starting to splinter, come apart. We've had some injuries out there. We've had a lot of repairs out there, and it was just time to come down.
Okay, the last one. Can you just quickly help me understand on that photo, are those things for different age groups? And if there are different sections for different age groups, can you kind of walk us through about how each one has accessibility and inclusivity?
Yeah, there's 3 basic components and Ben, maybe you want to come up and you can help me with this, but if you truly want to know. I don't have a picture of the 2 through 5 age group. It's a separate playground that's not in this presentation. It was in last night. That's to the left of this. This particular large structure is for what age group, Ben?
It's actually for grades 1 through 3, but it's designed for ages 5 through 12.
This one?
The big primary one, kind of right in the center. The one that's kind of off and back and to the right is designed for more of your 4 through 6th grade, but it's also designed for 5 through 12-year-olds.
How about the spider web?
Same thing, 5 through 12-year-olds.
And, I mean, do they have to be sort of evaluated individually as to how inclusive they are, or is it just one big picture?
Well, there's a reason for this.
Yeah, so it's all the above. The individual structure has to be evaluated, the individual fall zone, then the entire playground area. So for the entire playground for the entire school, so it include the pre-K playground that's not actually illustrated in this and everything.
I have a very fast question. And you can get back to me later if you need to. Could you give me a ballpark on what an AstroTurf field costs?
Well, yeah, I can tell you what it cost to do at West High School. We spent about $1.2 million.
Thank you.
That was track improvements as well.
Thank you, Dwayne. And I just want to clarify, my point is this is important and we should spend time on it. It's just that I think we should be equitable about the amount of time per board member so that we can all get questions in and get the information out.
And I appreciate that. If I had a request of the board, it would be a sense of direction, because the committee wants to move forward, and I think if the committee's okay with relocating the Kahuna, I would hope that we can go ahead and get those parts ordered. And I don't know that it takes a formal board action, but maybe just a consensus.
Do we have consensus to support the changes that are, for the most part? I don't know if we necessarily need a motion. Do we need a motion for that?
I think we've already moved on.
Yeah, we've already moved it. We would approve
everything.
it. So
Yeah, but there is a change. We're going to change some of the equipment. We're going to have to do a change order with the equipment manufacturer. So, I mean, I can formalize it and bring it to you next time, but I guess if there is consensus, I can at least give them a heads up that this is what we're going to be doing.
Okay.
We've received a lot of feedback today about the Shimmick situation, so that's the feeling that I'm getting.
They like the zero entry and they want the Kahuna back. They're getting both.
That's what I've heard. Got over a dozen emails today.
Okay.
Thank you.
Point of clarification, I just saw a couple heads nod. Just want to make sure general consensus across.
I don't have any objection to, putting the
Is there any
Kahuna where he wants to put it, and the zero entry is great. I guess I still wonder if the future holds maybe more things that could be done, later, where in addition.
And going back to the board work session, we are going to look at that playground policy and put together that playground committee. So that's just one, make sure that you're aware of that as well.
Further questions? All right, moving on to Appendix 9, high level, Dwayne, high level. Yep, Appendix 9.
Excuse me. All right, so we have 3 projects with 3 requests. The first one is a change request for Liberty High School, and it's for $64,000. And the district actually requested that some additional landscaping be put in place. I think if you've driven by there in the last day or two, you've seen it. It's really starting to shape up. We also, which was part of it, we also requested about $28,000 in audio-visual equipment, and that is so that we can pipe presentations from the gym to the cafeteria, from the cafeteria to the music room, or from the auditorium back and forth. It's additional equipment that we wanted purchased, so we have that flexibility. It's going to get put to the test. There's a Google Summit there in August, and then there's a staff development day there as well in August, like the 17th. So we're going to have this in place so that if we have overflow crowds for any of the presentations, this information can go from room to room. So that's what this request is about. There was also some code-related things for some additional alarms, and the elevator inspectors wanted some additional alarms put on the elevators. At Longfellow, again, a district request that we made. It's a change for $24,312. And in the original plans, because we were a little concerned about hitting the budget, we did. We actually came in under. And we still have, and we of course have our 5% contingency, but we want to add some cabinets, casework we call it, to the art room and to the music room and the ELP room. And that involves a little bit of plumbing and some flooring changes, so that's what that request is for. West High School, not a simple item, but I think I can explain it. We got 4 bids. The bids ranged from $11,375,000 to $13,234,000. We did our due diligence. We talked to the low bidder. We discovered that they wanted to use a precast fabricator that we know can't meet the specs. We have a certain width requirement, a certain thickness requirement, and a certain height requirement, because as you may recall, that gym's going to be a storm shelter. So it's extra thick and extra strong, and this particular prefabricator for precast panels does not have the equipment in-house to do it. Doesn't mean they can't get it, but they won't get it in time because we need to get started. This contractor also wanted to erect the panels themselves, and we, in our plans, had requested that it be a certified erector because of the weight and height of these units. It is a dangerous part of the construction process. I mean, it's probably one of the most dangerous. If you don't set those panels right and anchor them right, weld them right, they can fall over and kill somebody. And we don't want to see that. So we want a certified erector. We want the right panels. So to go from low bid of $11,375,000 to the, and I'm going to recommend to you that you reject the low bid and you go with the second bid. The second bid was $12 million. It's $600,000 more, but they have the right material and the right erection crews. So that's my recommendation, is to go with the second low bid. It's McComas Lucina of Iowa City, who is the contractor currently on Liberty High School. Done a wonderful job. They just do nice work. And the other small point I wanted to put out in the Appendix 9 item, I caught reading this yesterday that it listed the budget for this project as $8,929,000, when in fact back in January the board revised those budgets and this budget was changed to $14,329,000. So going forward we'll correct the Appendix 9 items, but I just wanted to point that out. With that, I'd answer any questions you might have.
On this, well, this is on another issue, but your concerns are with the precast wall panels?
Yes.
Are we having any issues with the precast wall panels at Weber?
Yes.
Is TRICOM supposed to be checking on material quality for us on these projects?
Yeah, TRICOM's not on the Weber project. That's Climate. TRICOM's not doing Weber. That's Climate Construction.
Okay.
And I have 2 engineers' reports on my desk, and there were some minor crazing, they call it. It's like little shrinkage cracks in the surface of that. It was exposed to the elements, last winter. And they have since gone out there and cleaned those cracks out, put epoxy and sanded them out, and they're getting ready to put a new surface on, or skin, a paint skin on there. So, but the company that provided those panels is the reason I want to disqualify the low bidder, because they're the one that gave a price to the apparent low bidder, and they just can't produce the panels that we need. So yeah, there's a connection there.
Okay, and now are those panels, we've accepted those, and any additional costs that we ran into taking care of these cracks, is that something
that's all on the builder, and on zero, is it Zero Energy? Yeah, I think it's Zero Energy. They've taken care of all the improvements, and we have a 2-year warranty on that structure like that. So the future cracks, it's on them. There were none on the inside, however. They were all exterior. So that tells me they're not structural, because if they're structural, they probably went through the entire panel. They're cosmetic. They don't look good, but they're cosmetic.
Other questions, or is there a motion?
I move that we approve the Appendix 9 items as presented.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Any additional questions? All right, Kim, I think we're ready.
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with Directors Liebig, Deloach, Rotland, Kirschling, and Ressler voting yea, and Director Hemingway voting nay.
Okay, we have our items withdrawn from the consent agenda. Phil,
Right, and I'll
That's
keep
an
these as brief as possible. In the band uniforms, I think that's the first one, yeah, at Liberty. The reason I'm bringing this up is that we are going with the more expensive bid after talking with staff members. I believe both of our schools use the same uniforms at West and City High. This is, from what I've gathered from them, we get great service on these. They last very long. The company we have selected usually makes high school uniforms, which are more rugged. The lower bidder was a company that sells a lot to colleges, which are a little less sturdy and don't last as long. So I urge that we approve item 1 in the consent agenda here to.
I'll second that, but kind of ask a question now.
Yes,
I'm just
you can.
curious of why we pulled it if that was something you were going to approve anyway.
Because it's a $2,000 increase in a item that we're purchasing, and I felt it was necessary to inform the public. It only required a minute for a $2,000 decision.
So was that a motion, though, to approve it?
Yeah.
Phil, I will say that 65% of the bid evaluation was on the suitability of the materials and for the district use, and that's why the higher cost bid won out. Only 25% of the bid was based upon the actual price.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
And I just want to be clear that we're voting on item 6.
Okay, excuse me.
As you refresh, it's now item 1.
Right.
In the bottom.
It's item 1.
What was
and
number
items
6?
drawn,
Yes.
but however you want me to refer
Yeah,
to it.
no, that's fine. I just want to make sure that I'm.
When I pull them down, they lose the number that they were in the consent agenda. It automatically renumbers them, so.
Give it a
but I do
refresh
have
and see what
6.
happens here.
I think we're ready.
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Yeah, and on the next one, item 2, I'd just like explanation on the service and you know, it's an ongoing contract.
Yeah, no problem. So this is for Canvas Learning Management System. Just brief overview, learning management system. You can basically think of it as an online web platform specifically for education. So K-12 and higher ed, these are used extensively. Anyone familiar with the University of Iowa's ICON system? That is actually Canvas, so that is this. Numerous school districts, I've actually implemented and supported LMS systems for over 10 years. Basically, it's a place where you can provide in a standardized way, which is what this proposal is, a one-stop location for students, teachers, and parents to access assignments beyond what you would find in PowerSchool with a list of assignments, but actual assigned materials, supplemental materials. Students can submit assignments there. Teachers are able to log in, see all those submissions, grade them within the system. It synchronizes with PowerSchool, so anything that they enter there, they don't have to duplicate again in the PowerSchool system. Just a quick overview of where this came from. I received a number of requests from teacher groups and departments at the secondary level, particularly the high school level, to add a standardized LMS. We've had LMS systems in use for years in the district. We just have teachers and schools that are, you know, adopting usually free versions of Canvas and Schoology and Moodle and Edmodo, and the list goes on. That's created, obviously, some complications from a teacher perspective because the district can't provide support for those, at least not any sort of systematic support. Also for parents and students who are accessing multiple systems depending on what, you know, classes the kids are enrolled in. So this is a standardized system. Like I said, pretty common. LMSs in general are common, especially in districts of our size, but even much smaller districts. Canvas in particular we looked at. It was the lowest cost option for us. It also checked all of our technical and academic boxes. Then sort of backup, and this is some new information because Dubuque's been using this for a couple of years, as has Sioux City. But West Des Moines, Cedar Rapids, Des Moines are all implementing Canvas for next fall as well. So it's something that's becoming pretty standard across Iowa. Happy to answer any other questions.
Two quick questions.
Yeah.
So it says over 30 teachers involved in a Canvas pilot recommended its adoption. So there was a pilot of this already?
Correct. So when we were contacted initially by the science department at West High School, they had requested that my office coordinate a pilot that could be used so that people could evaluate whether this would be something that was useful. So I reached out. Yep. Looks like you had a question. So
Over 30 teachers involved recommended its adoption. Is 30 was the total pilot?
So the
30
total
teachers,
pilot,
or was that a subset?
Yes,
of
the total pilot was something like 34 teachers, and it was unanimous in terms of recommending that we adopt it.
And this is going to result in the elimination of the distribution of planners.
Correct. So when we were talking about it, that was sort of the cost offset. Is when we look at Canvas, it's about $5.50 per student. The cost of printing the planners, my understanding is slightly more than that.
So the idea is the students would do whatever they do with their planners, they would do that online now?
Exactly. Correct. So it automatically populates calendars with assignments and things like that.
Not just secondary students?
Secondary, correct. So this would be for junior high and high school students and teachers.
Other questions? Can we have a motion?
Move we approve the consent agenda item 7 as presented.
Second.
Kim, I think we're ready to vote.
Online voting is open.
Oh, sorry, I'm not on that page.
Are you, go ahead. Kim, sorry.
All votes have been cast and the motion carries with Directors Liebig, Deloach, Kirschling, and Ressler voting yea, and Directors Hemingway and Rotland voting nay.
Yes, on item 3, I think I talked with Matt about this, and this is something we're piloting. If you could just give a brief explanation.
Sure. I was approached by the principal at Tate High School, Miss Browning, who had been in contact with some representatives from Northwest Education Association here, and the MAP assessment is an assessment you can give twice a year, and it can work in a couple different functions as some summative results, but also some screener results to get some more formative data on students about where their reading and math levels may be, so you can better align maybe some instructional opportunities for those students. Southeast is also interested in piloting this potentially along with their Castle program or with some students. There's no charge for the licenses they'd be allowing us to do this year. I know there's also been some questions about any kind of sharing of information and data. This would be consistent with the directory sharing we do with Iowa Assessments for their assessment or for other assessments that we use outside organizations for. So no other student records outside of that directory information consistent with those would be shared. But we really see it as a potential opportunity for us at the secondary level, just with knowing we don't have a lot of screener data or assessment data on some of our secondary students like we do in elementary, which sometimes inhibits, the ability to effectively intervene and instruct on those things that students may be deficient in. So that's why we brought it to you, because it's a contract. So even though there's no funding for it or a cost to the district at this time, it's still a contract we'd be entering into.
Other questions? If not, can we have a motion?
I move we approve the Northwest Evaluation Association pilot.
Second.
I'm still struggling with this whole issue of sharing the student data. And, we approved the policy last week about student records access, and wish I'd pulled it up more quickly, but, and I clicked into the document about what our legal commitment is to share data with them, and I just still have my doubts about who's benefiting from our student data and whether that's even within the terms of what we really meant by that policy. But
Kim, we're ready to have a question.
I have another quick question. Are we looking at going with this type of assessment in the future?
I don't think we could guarantee any kind of commitment or project that out right now with what we know is going on at the state level with assessments and Iowa assessments or smarter balanced assessments. There's several districts in Iowa that do use the MAP assessment as their second measure as required by the state. We use a locally determined measure right now. There would be a cost long-term with it, and I don't think we could project or want to commit to anything that way when we don't know what a potential cost to be required to pay for another assessment is going to be right now. So it's a pilot. We can evaluate it. It may work for us. It may not, and cost could be a factor. Effectiveness could be a factor. It could be a lot of things, but so kind of unsure at this moment.
Thanks.
Any further questions? Kim, I think we're ready to vote.
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with Directors Deloach, Rotland, Kirschling, and Ressler voting yea, and Directors Liebig and Hemingway voting nay.
Yes, and on the item 4, we have 2 out-of-town lighting companies that gave us bids. We're going with the higher one since they're doing work at our schools. Did we contact Musco Lighting or anything to bid on this project? Or?
This isn't in their wheelhouse. Musco does exterior lighting. This is for lighting that's on the stage, and there is a difference of $111. But the contractor, the school principal, they both recommended that we use the contractor that's on site. So they're both from Minneapolis. However, I do think that Gopher Lighting also may have an office somewhere in Iowa. I'm not familiar with the actual location, but they're both reputable companies. That Norcosco is doing some of the audio-visual work out there at the stage. And this is just, that lighting wasn't part of the original contract, so it's coming out of the furniture, fixture, and equipment fund. I just went with their recommendation.
Is there a motion?
I move we approve the award of contract with Norcosco of Minneapolis, Minnesota in the amount of $89,705.
Second.
Further discussion? Okay. Kim, I think we're ready to vote.
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with Directors Liebig, Deloach, Rotland, Kirschling, and Ressler voting yea, and Director Hemingway voting nay.
Yeah, and on the number 5, with the work being done at Coralville Central Elementary School, just some clarification on the alternative 2. Are we, is it in the plans to remove that baseball field?
Yeah, actually, that may not be, I may not have described it adequately. The baseball field exists, but it currently has a skin infield, and the issue was, do we put grass where the skin was? Like it's skin like a softball field would be, and do the kids use that, or would they use grass? Grass might be actually safer surface than a skin field, but we thought the price was high, and we know that if we want to do that with our own forces, that we could do that in the future if they chose to do it. We can do that with our own grounds crew in the future. If the school thinks that they would rather have the grass, we'll gladly go in there with our grounds crew and put grass in there, and we can do that ourselves.
But presently, there's no plans to make the change.
No, I left alternate 2 off. Right. So.
Okay, I urge we adopt item 5.
You making a motion?
I move that we approve item 5.
Second.
Second.
Ready to vote?
Who was the second? I'm sorry.
Me.
Paul.
Thank you. Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
And item 6 and 7 we'll put together. This is one that we pulled because we got one bid. and we came in much higher with the other one. Just one quick question, did we actually ask for a second bidding with Future Line, or did we just keep their first bid and contact the Des Moines firm?
No, this is their original bid. They said they'd honor it for another 30 days or so, so we went out and got.
Okay, so they did this?
No, this is the original bid.
This is their original bid, and you just got one bid from the
Right.
other company?
But there is something you need to know, because you asked us to go to Des Moines and get these.
Right, yes,
And
yeah.
I have since learned, there are only 2 vendors in the entire state of Iowa that can provide this equipment. These are the 2.
Right.
The vendor in Des Moines said that they would give us a quote. They knew they'd be high, but they're not interested in coming into this territory and competing with Future Line. So in the future, they probably won't provide us a quote. So we may either have to rely on the one or go out of state to find it.
Well, okay, my contact with Midwest, who was the company that declined to comment on this, was saying that they would, Hawkeye Truck would provide a technician to come to his shop and service equipment that came into his. But, but I appreciate you following up on that, and if it requires us getting outside bids, fantastic. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I urge that we combine 6 and 7 and approve items 6 and 7 in the consent agenda.
Can I just clarify that they're items 12 and 13? That's the numbers that they were in the consent agenda.
I apologize. Yes.
Just for clarification, because
yes.
Thank you.
12 and 13 from the consent agenda.
Were they 11?
12 and 13.
I move that we approve items 12 and 13 from the consent agenda.
Second.
Ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Mercer Pool agreement?
Yeah, and on the Mercer Pool, I'd just like a little more explanation on this contract with Mercer going forward.
What questions do you have?
Well, they have in here that we are, I know doing the bills that we have a 7,000 plus from the city of Iowa City. This is in addition to that. This is a different one as opposed to that one. It says that it's $90,000, but it's adjusted. Do we have what the figure was last year, that type of a thing?
The last 5-year average, we've averaged over $94,000 payment for the pool to the city.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you. Yeah, I urge that we approve the Mercer contract, item 14 from the consent agenda.
I move that we approve item 14 from the consent agenda.
Thank you.
Second.
We're ready for the question.
Online voting is open.
Thank you. Alexander Elementary.
All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Sorry.
Yes, this item was added to the agenda yesterday. It is one bid contract. I would urge that we put it out for rebid.
So can I respond to that? We did ask 3 different contractors who do this kind of work. The 2 contractors who declined to bid it both said they just had too much work. These are time sensitive. These are units that need to be in place by the start of school. It's not just kind of an additional thing. They're actually required units. And Amy can help me with this, and if you need any information on what they're being used for, she can fill you in on that. But this is very time sensitive, and if we don't pass it, I can't guarantee that those units will be there when school starts. It's that simple. So I would urge you to pass it, because we asked multiple contractors. This is the only one that responded.
Dwayne, we've moved these things around before. How does this quote compare?
Well, the engineer's estimate for Hills was $115,000, and it came in at $98,000. And the engineer's estimate for Alexander was 90,000 and it came in at 90,000. So they're both right on the mark, if not just a little less at Hills. So I felt they were very competitive based on the engineer's estimate and my past experience. I have no problem with the dollars that are being.
Can you just fill us in though? If this goes to Alexander, how many modulars are we going to have at Alexander at that point?
We'll have 2 duplex units. So this is a duplex unit, so it'll be a total of 4 classrooms.
And how many interior rooms at Alexander that were not originally to be used as classrooms will be in use as classrooms?
There are 2 what we called commons areas that were at the end of the corridors that were open that could be used for pull-out situations. Those 2 rooms have been converted to classrooms.
Those will still be classrooms even after we move this
Yes.
onto this site. But the library room that they created will no longer be a classroom?
The library, and Amy, correct me, but there was a temporary class in that library space. I think this will resolve that.
How about at Hills? Oh, I'm sorry, go
They're
ahead.
going to reclaim that, but we are
Okay.
going to utilize the computer lab, just
So there'll be 3 interior rooms that weren't originally, okay. How about at Hills? I mean, how many total modulars will there be there?
Well, these, first of all, the description of these, and you weren't on the board then, but 4 years ago, we bought like 12 what I would call half-size modulars, and they were used by the University of Iowa through FEMA and the flood that they had. And these were smaller units, and we purchased them really at a reasonable cost for whatever purpose. And if you're familiar with, there's 2 sitting at Coralville Central, and there's 2 sitting at Horn. They use them for things like ELL or ELP or instrument practice, music, those kinds of things. Or they're used as offices by staff or by some of the resource teachers,
So
for lack of a better
will
word.
these in the proposal be the only modulars at Hills?
No, I'm getting to that.
Just a point of order, we're not talking about Hills in this specific.
Oh, I'm sorry, I guess we're
We're
not on to
only
the Hills
talking
one
about
yet. You're right,
Alexander.
we can wait on that.
Unless this was supposed to be coupled together. I'm just following the rules.
Yeah, I thought it was, but
We were only on Alexander, unless this is going to be a situation where we're adding Hills, and at this point, it's too late.
We can discuss them both.
well, Madam
We've
President,
already-
there's a separate item for Hills here.
Exactly.
Okay.
So we have to go on to, we need to vote on Alexander, and then we can continue with the Hills discussion. Is there a motion?
I move we approve the Alexander Modular Unit Project.
Second.
Additional questions, discussion? Okay, we can you call the question?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with directors Liebig, Deloach, Rotland, Kirschling, and Ressler voting yea and Hemingway voting nay.
Now we can talk about Hills
Yeah, I
Elementary.
guess,
now.
and on the last one, same thing, this was submitted yesterday, came in with 1 bid, and I urge a rebid.
Same response.
Thanks.
Yeah, could you just finish up what you were about
Sure.
to tell me, though?
So anyway, at Hills, they currently have 2 duplex modulars, so there's 4 temporary classrooms there today. These are the 4 smaller units that I was describing that would be placed down there. They're currently sitting at the physical plant. They're the last 4 that we have. So those will be used to house resource teachers and some resource programs. And Amy, you can elaborate on that.
Special Ed Title I and ELL.
So we'll end up having 4 existing actual sort of classroom rooms that are modular, in addition to these 4 rooms that will not be classrooms. Is that right? Okay.
That's correct.
And Amy, just to be clear, we added resources via the weighted resource allocation model there, so
Yep.
they needed more
Yep.
space this year, coming year.
Is there a motion?
I move that we approve the Hills Elementary Modular Unit Project.
Second? Kim, we're ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with directors Liebig, Deloach, Rotland, Kirschling, and Ressler voting yea and Director Hemingway voting nay.
Okay, moving on to our agenda setting.
I have one thing I would like to add to the agenda and one that might be a parking lot item. I would like to add an agenda item discussing New Hoover and our working with the city on as far as sidewalks, speed,
Yep.
and all that, so we can get that taken care of before that school opens next year for Longfellow. I know that Steve has a meeting with Jeff Fruin, so hopefully we can get an update from there. And then maybe if we need to take any direction as a board to try and push the city along a little bit harder, faster to get that done. My second one would be more of a parking lot question, and I know Adam and Matt and the Policy and Governments Committee talked this, but just maybe when we're ready for some sort of update on our acceptable use policy. I know you guys are going to come back with something more along the lines that where all the schools were together the same or similar.
I'm supportive of both those items.
That was all.
I think that there should be an item for the Hoover petition. You know, even if we don't put it on, if they file the petition, we're going to have to put one on anyways. I do wonder, I mean, I guess now, based on what we received an email, there's going to be an exempt session at 5:30, is that right?
I think so.
Kind of wondering if we should still have that superintendent contract item on the main agenda.
Take it off.
Yeah, because there won't be any time for people to see or respond to whatever comes out of that exempt session.
Right. I agree with that.
Okay. Other things?
Yeah, I'd like to have a superintendent update on the superintendent's degree on the next meeting.
That's something
I'm not supportive of that in this meeting.
Hmm?
I'm not supportive of that in an open meeting.
Well, I mean, that would still have to be a discussion. We have to talk agenda setting anyways. I could put it down on the list, and then that's a conversation that we can have, but I don't know if I mean, just the fact that we're going through this whole process with superintendent evaluation, we just need to figure that out.
It's been asked of the board president, and I have not gotten a response, and I think it'd be
Okay, well, I'll
prudent
make sure
to
that
have
I take that to him. And we can
have that in a public forum.
There's a time and a place, and I don't believe that's the time and the place.
Okay, anything else? All right, I'm gonna call for adjournment. Can I,
So moved.
Second.
all right. That concludes our business here today, and thank you.
Vote on that.
Oh, vote. Anybody? Can I get some ayes or some
Yeah, I'll agree to
nays?
that one.
Aye.
Okay, thank you.